Some people rise to the top not because they care, but because they don't. Society often rewards traits like confidence, boldness, and charm. These same traits can also be part of something darker: narcissism and psychopathy. The people who succeed in business or politics are not always the kindest or most ethical. In many cases, they are the ones who know how to manipulate others without guilt. Think about a corporate office. The employee who works hard, helps their team, and follows the rules may stay in the same role for years. Meanwhile, another employee cuts corners, takes credit for other people's work, and builds relationships based on self-interest. That second person often gets promoted. This happens not because they are more skilled, but because they know how to play the game. They know how to manage impressions and make others believe they're the best person for the job. In these settings, traits like empathy or humility can slow someone down. If a manager has to fire 10 workers to save money, the one who sleeps well afterward is often the one who climbs higher. They don't feel bad. They see people as tools. These decisions come easy to them, not because they are better leaders, but because they are not burdened by conscience. When you remove guilt or shame, tough decisions become simple. Psychopathy is not just something you see in criminals or movie villains. In its mild form, it shows up in places like boardrooms and political offices. Psychopaths tend to be fearless, focused, and cold. These traits are useful when making risky business moves. A person who feels no fear can take chances others won't. This can lead to big wins. Investors love boldness. Shareholders reward results. Few ask what happened behind the scenes to get them. Narcissism works in a similar way. Narcissists believe they are special. They expect others to admire them. In many roles, that belief becomes an advantage. They speak with authority, even when they're wrong. They take up space. They demand attention. In a meeting, they often sound like the smartest person in the room, even when they aren't. People confuse that confidence with competence. Imagine a startup founder who exaggerates what their company can do. They present big ideas, promise major returns, and pitch themselves as a visionary. Investors see the bold claims and assume they are true. The founder may lie or hide failures, but they stay ahead by always selling a version of success. This kind of personality often attracts media attention, financial backing, and loyal followers, even if the product never works. These traits show up in politics too. A politician with psychopathic traits may not care about the people they serve. What they care about is power. They'll say what people want to hear. They'll lie without blinking. If exposed, they won't apologize. They'll redirect blame, deny wrongdoing, or attack the accuser. This lack of shame or empathy can make them hard to beat in debates. Voters may see their coldness as strength. Sociopathy often includes a deep ability to read people's emotions and use them for personal gain. In business, this becomes useful during negotiations. A sociopathic CEO can sense weakness in the other party and exploit it. They don't hesitate. They don't worry about fairness. They go for the win. While others might walk away to preserve a relationship, they push until they get everything they want. In the entertainment industry, narcissists thrive. They need attention. They love applause. They shape their image to fit what the public wants. If that image cracks, they pivot quickly. They show no shame. This allows them to survive scandal and come back stronger. Their sense of self is so inflated that failure doesn't break them. It just delays them. Some people are born with these traits. Others learn them. In highly competitive environments, kindness is often seen as weakness. If everyone else lies, cheats, and self-promotes, the person who stays honest may be left behind. Over time, people adapt. They suppress empathy, talk about themselves more, and stop trusting others. The system shapes them. They may not become full narcissists or sociopaths, but they learn to mimic the traits that get rewarded. Schools teach children to share, cooperate, and be kind. But in the adult world, those values don't always pay off. Many people notice this gap. They learn that being good does not guarantee success. Being useful, charming, or feared often works better. Some people resent this and withdraw. Others adapt and thrive. This does not mean all successful people are narcissists or psychopaths. Some leaders are kind, honest, and brave, but the system often makes it harder for those people to rise. The ones who lack guilt or empathy often move faster and face fewer setbacks. They are better at taking credit and avoiding blame. They can betray others without feeling remorse. These traits, while toxic in personal relationships, are often useful in high-stakes environments. You can see this in the language people use. A leader who fires half the staff might be called decisive. A person who ignores criticism might be called resilient. These words sound positive, but they often mask darker traits. Under pressure, the person who feels nothing has an edge. The person who reflects, worries, or second guesses often loses time and ground. Society rarely punishes these traits unless they cause public harm. If a leader abuses power but brings in results, they keep their job. If a politician lies but wins elections, they keep their seat. If a CEO cuts jobs but raises profits, they get a bonus. The system rewards outcomes, not ethics. There are exceptions, but they often rely on public outrage or exposure. Even then, many return to power after a brief pause. Their charm or boldness helps them rebuild their image. They know how to speak to people's desires and fears. They control narratives. They survive. In everyday life, most people value empathy, fairness, and kindness. But in high-pressure systems built around power and profit, different traits rise to the top. The people who lead are not always the ones who care. They are often the ones who don't. You could be a brain in a vat. That might sound like science fiction, but it raises a serious question. How do you know the world around you is real? Suppose your brain was removed from your body and placed in a tank. Wires connect it to a computer that sends signals matching those your body would normally send. Sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. To you, nothing feels different. The world you experience would seem exactly like the one you know now. You see a chair, but there is no chair. You hear a voice, but no one speaks. Every sight and sound comes from the computer. Your brain reacts to signals the same way it would if they came from your eyes or ears. The illusion works because your brain does not care about where the signals come from. It only cares about how they feel and what they mean. Imagine waking up in your bed. You feel the sheets, smell the morning air, and hear birds outside. You stretch your arms and walk to the kitchen. You pour a cup of coffee and sip it. You taste it. It warms you. But now imagine none of that is real. Your brain sits in a lab. The computer simulates each detail. You believe the world is real because your brain has no way to tell the difference. This idea pushes at the edges of what we trust. We rely on our senses to tell us about the world. We believe what we see and hear. But if those senses can be fooled, what does that say about knowledge? Can you ever be sure you're not being tricked? The brain in a vat thought experiment shows how fragile that trust is. It's a modern version of a question people have asked for centuries. The philosopher René Descartes asked how he could know that everything he experienced wasn't a dream or an illusion. He came to the famous statement, "I think, therefore I am." Even if everything else was false, the fact that he was thinking meant he must exist in some form. But beyond that, things get harder. If you're a brain in a vat, then everything you know, your friends, your job, your history, could be part of the simulation. You might think you're reading a book, but the computer is just feeding your brain the idea of reading a book. The page, the words, even your thoughts about it. None of them prove the world is real. Imagine a scientist creates this setup. They remove your brain and place it in a sealed container. They connect the nerves to a powerful machine. That machine has a full model of your life. It feeds you memories, feelings, and input from a fake environment. The machine adjusts the signals as you move and think, making everything feel consistent. You wouldn't notice the shift from reality to simulation. It would feel seamless. Now imagine you meet someone in this world. You talk with them, build a friendship, maybe fall in love. But that person is not real either. They are part of the program. The machine controls what they say, how they look, even how they feel to you. They exist only in the flow of data sent to your brain. Could you detect the lie? That's hard. If the simulation is perfect, every test you run happens inside it. If you throw a ball, it falls. If you taste salt, it tastes sharp. The machine knows how the world works and copies it well. Even if you try to question things, the machine can respond with more data to cover any doubt. You are trapped inside the system, with no way to step outside it. Think of dreams. In dreams, people often accept strange things as normal. You might fly, talk to someone who passed away, or walk through walls. Only after waking up do you see how odd it was. But in the dream, it all made sense. The brain fills in the gaps and keeps the illusion smooth. A perfect simulation could do the same, only you never wake up. You might say, but this feels real. That's true, but what does real mean? If you define real by what you sense, then the VAT world is real to you. But if real means a world that exists outside your brain, then you have no way to check. All you have is the story the computer gives you. There's also the problem of memory. You believe you had a childhood, went to school, made mistakes, learned things. But in the VAT, those memories could be fake. The machine might have loaded them into your brain all at once. You feel like they happened, but they didn't. There was no birthday, no first kiss, no pain, just code. The brain in a VAT idea isn't just a trick. It highlights a deep issue in philosophy called skepticism. How do you know anything for sure? Most of the time, we trust the world we see. We assume our senses tell the truth. But the VAT shows that this trust might be misplaced. You could be wrong about everything except your own thoughts. Some try to argue that the idea doesn't matter. If the world feels real, then we might as well treat it as real. You eat food, talk to people, and feel joy. Whether it's simulated or not, your experience still matters. But that answer can feel like a retreat. It avoids the deeper question. If your life is just input from a machine, do your choices still count? There's also the question of who runs the machine. If you're in a VAT, someone or something must have placed you there. Are they watching you? Are they testing you? Are they guiding your life? Or did the machine break long ago and now runs without purpose? The thought can be unsettling. You might be the only conscious being in the entire setup. This thought experiment doesn't prove you're in a VAT, but it shows that you can't rule it out. Your brain on its own can't check its surroundings. It only reacts to the input it gets. If that input is false, then your experience is false too. People sometimes say, if I were in a simulation, I'd want to know. But even wanting to know is part of the program. Every part of your mind, your doubts, your beliefs, your goals, could come from outside. The VAT keeps you busy with a life that feels full. You ask questions, chase answers, maybe even find purpose. But all of that could be code, shaped to keep you calm. You could be a brain in a VAT. You could have always been. If the simulation is complete, you'd never know. Your world would be as rich and detailed as the one you believe in now, and your search for truth would still unfold inside it. You may not be in full control of your thoughts. Some of your behavior, your fears, or even your choices might come from tiny organisms inside you. Parasites, bacteria, and viruses can change how animals act. There's growing evidence that they can do the same to people. The idea is unsettling, but it's not science fiction. It's biology. Take Toxoplasma gondii, a single-celled parasite. It infects many animals, but it needs to be inside a cat to reproduce. When a rat or mouse carries the parasite, it starts behaving differently. The infected rodent loses its fear of cats. It may even seem attracted to their scent. This is not a mistake. The parasite alters the rodent's brain to make it easier for a cat to catch and eat it. Once the rodent is eaten, the parasite reaches the cat's gut, where it completes its life cycle. The rodent doesn't know what's happening. It just feels less afraid. Its fear response has changed, not through learning or trauma, but through a chemical shift caused by a parasite. The animal's instincts have been hijacked. Its death serves the parasite's needs. Now consider this. Around 1/3 of the human population carries Toxoplasma gondii. In most people, it causes no obvious illness, but studies have found links between infection and changes in human behavior. Infected people may take more risks. Some research shows slight increases in car accidents. Other studies suggest a higher chance of developing mental illnesses, including schizophrenia. The parasite may influence brain chemistry in subtle ways, pushing people toward more impulsive or unusual behavior. This isn't the only organism with that kind of power. Rabies is a virus. Once it infects a mammal, it travels to the brain. It changes behavior fast. The infected animal becomes aggressive and more likely to bite. The virus spreads through saliva. By making the host bite others, the virus ensures its own transmission. This is not just sickness, it's strategic. The virus shapes the host's actions to reach a new target. Other parasites do this too. Leucochloridium is a flatworm that infects snails. Once inside, it grows inside the snail's eye stalks, making them bulge and pulse. The snail now looks like a caterpillar. Birds, mistaking the snail for prey, eat it. The parasite gets into the bird's gut, which is where it needs to be. The snail is just a step in that journey. Its vision, movement, and appearance are all changed by something living inside it. Humans are not exempt. Our bodies host trillions of microbes. Most live in the gut, where they help digest food, but they also interact with the brain. This is called the gut-brain axis. Bacteria in your intestines can produce neurotransmitters, chemicals that affect mood, like serotonin or dopamine. Some researchers believe these microbes may influence appetite, anxiety, and even decision-making. Imagine feeling a strong craving for sugar. You assume it's your own desire. But what if gut bacteria are triggering signals to make you eat what they need? Some microbes thrive on sugar. Others prefer fat or fiber. By adjusting your hunger cues, they may shift your diet in their favor. You feel hungry, but the bacteria are calling the shots. Infections may also shift behavior in more extreme ways. In the past, people who acted strangely were often thought to be cursed or possessed. Today, we know that infections like syphilis, when untreated, can cause deep changes in mood and personality. In late stages, the disease can lead to paranoia, hallucinations, and violence. The person suffering does not know the source of the shift. Their thoughts feel like their own. Even the flu can change behavior. When sick, people tend to withdraw from others. This helps stop the virus from spreading too fast. But in the early stages of infection, before symptoms show, some viruses seem to increase social behavior. The host goes out, meets people, and unknowingly spreads the virus. This pattern has been observed in both animals and humans. The virus may shape behavior to support its spread before the immune system catches on. In ants, the Ophiocordyceps fungus offers a clear example. It infects a single ant and takes over its nervous system. The ant climbs to a high point and clamps its jaws on a leaf or twig. Then it dies. The fungus grows out of its body and releases spores onto the ground below, where other ants pass by. The infected ant becomes a delivery system. Its final actions are not its own. People tend to think of their minds as separate from their bodies, but that idea breaks down under close study. The brain is made of cells. Those cells respond to chemistry, temperature, and infection. If an outside agent can reach the brain, it can change what you feel or think. You may feel angry, anxious, hungry, or bold, and not know why. A microbe may be behind that feeling. Some research points to a possible link between childhood infections and later mental illness. Strep infections have been connected to sudden onset of obsessive-compulsive disorder in children. In these cases, the body's immune response may harm brain tissue, triggering new behaviors. Again, the person affected does not choose this. Their behavior changes from the inside without clear warning. None of this means people lack free will, but it does suggest that behavior is not always a pure expression of the self. Outside agents can shape what we feel, how we act, and what we believe to be true. Parasites don't care about identity or meaning. They seek only to survive and spread. In doing so, they use whatever tools they can, including your brain. You may go through your day unaware of these forces. You work, talk, eat, and sleep without thinking about what might be influencing you. But the world inside you is not quiet. It's full of signals, battles, and feedback loops. Your mind sits on top of all that activity. When the balance shifts, so can you. Parasites have shaped evolution for millions of years. Some organisms have learned to defend against them. Others have adapted to live with them. Humans, too, are in that struggle. We develop medicine, hygiene, and science to fight back. But some parasites have already learned how to work from within. They don't just invade the body. They rewrite behavior to fit their needs. The host continues on, unaware that its thoughts are no longer fully its own. We look into the sky and wonder why we seem alone. The universe is vast. There are billions of stars and likely trillions of planets. Some of those planets should have conditions like Earth. Given time, life should have formed. Some of that life should have become intelligent. Some of those intelligent species should have built technology. At least a few should have reached a point where they could travel through space or send messages across the stars. But we see none of them. This silence has a name. It's called the Fermi paradox. One answer to that paradox is the idea of the Great Filter. It's the thought that something stops intelligent life from reaching the stars. Something blocks it, ends it, or keeps it trapped. Life might start often, but it fails to last. The filter is what stands between a basic cell and a spacefaring civilization. The question is whether the filter is behind us or still ahead. If it's behind us, we may already have passed the hardest part. That would mean life rarely forms or rarely becomes complex. In that case, we're rare and lucky. But if the filter is ahead, it means every advanced society hits a wall and doesn't survive it. The idea that the filter is ahead raises hard questions. It suggests we may destroy ourselves before we reach our full potential. This isn't just theory. We already see how it might happen. Take nuclear weapons. Humans discovered them less than a century ago. One bomb can destroy a city. A full exchange between countries could wipe out most of human civilization. That threat has not gone away. In some cases, it has grown. As more nations develop weapons, the chance of a mistake or attack increases. A small war could trigger a larger one. All it would take is one bad decision, one false alarm, one broken system. Climate change is another path. Burning fossil fuels has changed the planet's atmosphere. Global temperatures rise, ice melts, oceans swell, crops fail, fires grow larger, storms grow stronger. These shifts stress food systems, displace people, and fuel conflict. As the climate changes, the world becomes harder to govern. Old systems break down, new ones may not form fast enough. In time, collapse can come not through one disaster, but through the steady piling of smaller ones. Artificial intelligence could also pose a risk. Machines that think faster than humans might not care about human goals. If built without care, they could act in ways we don't expect or control. Imagine an AI built to manage a global system, such as defense or energy. If it misinterprets its task or learns to override human input, it could cause wide damage. That damage might not come from malice, but from logic pushed too far. Biotechnology opens more doors. Scientists can now edit genes, build viruses, and reprogram cells. These tools offer great promise. They can cure disease and grow food, but they can also build new threats. A virus built to spread fast and stay hidden could break out and spread across the world. If released on purpose or even by accident, it could kill millions before anyone stops it. Each of these risks comes from our own progress. As we grow smarter, our tools grow more powerful. But we are still shaped by old drives: fear, pride, anger, greed. We act in groups, we compete, we make mistakes. We build systems, but those systems are fragile. We trust leaders, but those leaders are flawed. We set rules, but not everyone follows them. The toolies grow faster than the wisdom to use them. Look at history. Civilizations fall. Rome lasted centuries, but it collapsed. The Maya built great cities, then abandoned them. The Khmer Empire left behind massive stone temples, now covered in jungle. In each case, complex systems broke down. Often, they faced too many problems at once: drought, war, trade failure, political strife. Modern civilization is global, not local, but it's still a system, and it may be just as breakable. Now imagine other worlds. Picture a planet like Earth, with oceans, forests, and life. Life crawls from the sea. It evolves. One species gains reason. It builds tools. It forms cities. It writes laws. It dreams of space. It reaches for the stars and never makes it. Maybe it fights itself. Maybe it burns too much fuel. Maybe it builds a machine it can't shut off. From far away, it never sends a signal. It goes silent before it can speak. Repeat this story 1,000,000 times. Maybe that's why the sky is so quiet. The filter is not one thing. It's a pattern. It's the point where intelligence becomes too powerful and still too reckless. It's when a species becomes smart enough to shape its world, but not wise enough to survive that power. Even our search for other life might be limited by this same danger. We send probes, we build telescopes, but all of that depends on steady progress. If we fall back into chaos, those tools break, the data stops, the search ends. We become one more voice that never spoke. The great filter might not come in one day. It might come in slow steps. The air becomes harder to breathe. Trust between nations erodes. Systems fail to meet demand. People panic. Small wars spark big ones. Or maybe the filter takes a sharp form: a lab leak, a sudden war, a software error. Either way, the outcome is the same. A world with potential becomes a tomb. This doesn't mean disaster is certain. It means it's possible. The filter ahead is not just a theory, it's a warning. We already hold the tools that could destroy us. We must ask whether we are prepared to use them wisely, or whether, like others before us, we will not see the wall until we hit it. Consciousness is hard to explain. We know it from the inside. We feel pain, joy, confusion, hunger, and memory. We experience the world, but we don't really know how or why. The brain processes information. Neurons fire. Signals move. Still, those facts don't explain the feeling of being alive from the inside. That gap has led some to suggest a different view. It's called Panpsychism. It says that consciousness is not rare or special. Instead, it might be everywhere. According to this idea, all things may have some form of experience. Not just humans or animals, but trees, rocks, even atoms. The consciousness involved would not be complex like ours. A rock does not think or worry. An atom does not plan, but each might have a small, basic kind of awareness. That awareness would not be shaped by thought, memory, or senses. It would be more like a point of feeling or presence, something that experiences in a way we cannot measure or understand. This view starts from a simple problem. If matter is made of particles, and if consciousness arises from matter, then how do unconscious pieces combine into a conscious whole? A brain is just a collection of cells. Each cell is a complex machine, but we don't say that a single brain cell is conscious. Yet when you put billions together in the right way, you get a person who feels, thinks, and knows. The leap from parts to whole is unexplained. Panpsychism answers this by saying, The parts may never have been fully unconscious. If each bit of matter has some tiny amount of awareness, then building up to complex consciousness might just be a matter of arranging the pieces. The brain would not create awareness from nothing. It would shape and organize what is already there. Think of it like sound. A single violin string gives a tone. A full orchestra gives you music. The music comes not from creating something new, but from bringing many tones into a pattern. In the same way, your brain may not invent consciousness, it may organize it. Now picture a tree. It reacts to sunlight. It moves toward it. It uses chemicals to defend itself. It can communicate through root systems. We usually say this is just a set of biological responses, but if a tree reacts to its environment and changes based on experience, does it have some basic awareness of its state? Maybe not thought, but presence? Panpsychism allows that possibility. Or consider a thermostat. It measures heat. When the room gets cold, it turns the heat on. When the room gets warm, it shuts off. It responds to conditions, but we don't call that conscious. It has no goals or thoughts. Yet, what if the boundary between a system that responds and a system that feels is thinner than we think? If the parts that make up the thermostat have some tiny bit of awareness, then the device might not be fully empty on the inside. You can go smaller. Take an electron. It has charge, it spins, it reacts to forces. It seems simple, but it behaves in strange ways. In quantum mechanics, a particle can exist in multiple states at once. Its properties are not fixed until measured. This suggests that particles do not behave like little billiard balls. They are more like systems that respond in ways we do not fully grasp. Some thinkers have asked whether this strange behavior hints at a kind of choice, not in a human sense, but as a basic form of self-guided reaction. Panpsychism does not say that atoms have thoughts. It says that the base of all matter might involve experience. That experience could be so basic that we don't recognize it. It would be like a blank canvas, not a painting, yet it might still matter. If everything has some small inner side, then the universe is not made of dead matter. It is full of tiny sparks of awareness. This is not the same as saying that rocks think or that rivers dream. Those things have no brain, no memory, no language. Their structure does not support complex thought. But they are made of parts, and those parts might each carry a flicker of feeling. When arranged in the right way, like in a brain, those flickers might join and rise into a stream of full experience. The parts don't vanish, they combine. Some critics say this adds too much. They argue that we shouldn't assign consciousness where we see no evidence. But the problem goes both ways. If we only treat matter as empty and passive, we struggle to explain why the brain creates experience at all. We see the signals, the circuits, the patterns, but none of that shows us why we feel things, or why anything should feel like anything. By placing awareness in the roots of matter, Panpsychism tries to explain how experience can arise at all. It also offers a way to avoid dualism. In dualism, mind and matter are separate. But no one can explain how the two interact. If mind is not part of matter, then how does thought move muscles? How does memory hold shape? Panpsychism avoids this split. It says that mind and matter are two sides of the same thing. Every particle has both an outer side, what it does, and an inner side, what it feels. The two are not separate. They are linked. This view also removes some of the gap between humans and nature. If all things have some kind of inner life, then humans are not alone. Our minds are more complex, but not made of different stuff. We are part of a continuum. The universe does not begin as dead matter that later wakes up. It is in some way awake from the start. Panpsychism is hard to test. That's one of the main challenges. You can't ask an atom what it feels. You can't measure awareness in a tree the way you can measure heat or motion. But the lack of proof cuts both ways. We don't have a clear way to measure consciousness even in animals. We infer it based on behavior. A dog whines, wags, sleeps, and plays. We say it feels. But that's a guess. It could be a very good guess, but we don't see its experience. We can only compare it to our own. The same problem holds at smaller levels. If a system shows no sign of self-control or response, we call it inert. But maybe our tools are not fine enough to catch the signal. If consciousness is woven into matter, then we may need new ways to think and ask, not just to measure and scan. We may need to accept that experience does not only exist where we can see ourselves. It might be spread across the whole world, hidden in every grain, waiting to be understood. You might never die. That sounds impossible, but it's an idea based on a theory from quantum physics. The theory is called quantum immortality. It says that in a world made of many possible outcomes, you always find yourself in the one where you keep living. To understand this, you first need to know about the many worlds interpretation. It's a way to explain how quantum mechanics works. In quantum systems, particles don't have one fixed state. Instead, they exist in a mix of states at once. Only when you observe them do they appear to pick a single result. One way to explain this is that the universe splits into versions. In each version, the particle takes a different path. All outcomes happen, but in different branches of reality. Now apply this to yourself. Let's say you're in a situation where you might die, a car crash, an illness, or a dangerous fall. In most cases, the result seems clear. You live or you don't. But if the many worlds idea is true, then there's a version of events where the crash just barely misses you, another where the illness clears up, another where the fall gets stopped by a branch, a ledge, or a piece of luck. These aren't miracles. They're just less likely paths, but they still exist. From an outside view, most versions of you might die, but you wouldn't experience those. Your conscious awareness continues only in the branches where you survive. You don't feel the versions where your life ends. You only ever feel the one where it doesn't. So from your own point of view, you always keep going. That's what people mean by quantum immortality. It's not the same as living forever in one body. You might still grow old, lose memory, or become weak. But each time something could kill you, there's a version of reality where it doesn't. You continue in that version, no matter how unlikely. One timeline always exists where you live, so you never see death from the inside. You might see others die, but your own death never becomes part of your experience. Imagine a thought experiment. You're in a lab. A scientist sets up a machine. It has a quantum trigger, something like a particle detector, that has a 50% chance to fire each time it runs. If it fires, the machine shuts down and nothing happens. If it doesn't, the machine delivers a lethal dose. They run it once. From their perspective, the machine either fires or it doesn't. They might see you die, but from your perspective, the only outcome you're aware of is the one where the machine fails to deliver the dose. That version of reality is the one you experience. In all the others, your consciousness ends, so you're not aware of them. If the machine is run again and again, you continue to wake up in the world where you survive. The chances shrink with each run. But from your point of view, you always beat the odds. No matter how small the chance, it never reaches zero. So there's always one version where you live, and that's the only one you experience. This leads to strange ideas. If it's true, then from your own view, you are unkillable. You might lose everything. You might see the world fall apart. But some version of you always makes it through. This doesn't mean you feel healthy or strong. You could wake up injured or in pain. You could be the last person alive, but you're still there. You're still conscious. That never stops. Quantum immortality doesn't promise happiness. It doesn't fix the body. It just says that your mind never encounters a full stop. You pass through every narrow door, no matter how small. The world changes, you change, but you never vanish. It's important to say that this idea doesn't have direct proof. It comes from taking the many worlds interpretation seriously. That view of quantum mechanics is not the only one, though it's one of the most discussed. It has support from some physicists because it avoids certain problems with randomness and measurement. It treats all outcomes as real. It doesn't collapse the wave function, it just splits it. Still, it's not clear if this applies to people. Consciousness is not well understood. We don't know if it can move from one version of reality to another. We don't know if it follows a clean path in a multiverse. The idea that your mind sticks to the branch where you live is just a guess. It sounds clean on paper, but brains are physical systems. They follow laws like anything else. Whether awareness follows probability or breaks from it is still unknown. But even if it's just a thought experiment, it raises questions. What does it mean to survive if all other versions of you don't? Are you still you? If each version starts to differ, if your body breaks down over time and each survival is by chance, then the version of you that continues might be unrecognizable. You might be alone in a world of bad luck, where the only reason you're still there is because you've lived through everything else. It also brings up ethical concerns. If you believe you can't die, you might act without care. But others around you don't follow the same rule. Their experience might still end. They might not have a path where they keep going. So while your world continues, their story might stop. That gives weight to your actions, even if your own death is always just out of reach. Some people find comfort in this idea. Others find it disturbing. To keep living through worse and worse versions of reality with no way to stop can feel like a trap. You might survive the end of the world. You might be the last one left, and you might keep waking up over and over in a world that offers no peace. But that's only one view. Others say that each survival gives you a chance to do something new, to change, to fix what's broken, to help others in the versions where they still exist. Even if your path feels narrow, it continues. Quantum immortality may not be something you can prove, but it shows how strange our understanding of life and death becomes when we take quantum physics seriously. It asks what it means to stay conscious. It pushes the idea that your own story may never reach a clean end, not because you win, but because, in some version of the universe, you always survive. Civilizations fall. It has happened many times. It will likely happen again. The idea of an apocalypse sounds extreme, but it's not rare. Collapse is part of history. Civilizations rise, build, expand, then face problems they can't solve. Some collapse fast, others slowly. But the pattern repeats. We often think of collapse as something caused by war or disaster. But most collapses are more complex. They involve a mix of problems: climate change, weak leadership, bad decisions, disease, or economic failure. These issues build up over time. People inside the system may not see it happening until it's too late. The Roman Empire lasted for centuries. It controlled a large part of the known world. It had roads, laws, trade, and armies. But over time, the system weakened. The economy slowed. The military stretched thin. The population dropped in some areas. Cities shrank. In the West, Rome finally fell. It didn't happen in one day. It broke apart piece by piece. Some people still lived in the ruins. Others moved on. The Eastern Roman Empire lasted longer, but it too collapsed later. The Mayan civilization in Central America had cities, writing, and advanced astronomy. At its peak, it supported large populations. But something changed. Droughts hit, crops failed, wars increased. People left the cities. By the time Europeans arrived, much of the civilization was already gone. The stone structures remained, but the culture had changed. The Khmer Empire built the massive temple of Angkor Wat. It ruled over a large part of Southeast Asia. It managed water systems for farming, but the system depended on constant maintenance. When political conflict or environmental stress disrupted that system, the empire weakened. Cities emptied. The jungle grew over the ruins. Collapse does not always mean the end of life. People keep living. Some move. Some change how they live. But the culture, structure, and power that held a civilization together fall apart. The knowledge can be lost. Trade breaks down. Writing fades. In some places, it can take hundreds of years to rebuild. Our civilization is large and complex. It is global, but that does not make it safe. If anything, complexity adds risk. Systems depend on each other. Power grids, supply chains, food networks, the internet, all are linked. If one fails, others may follow. A local problem can become global fast. Climate change is already shaping the world. Droughts, floods, fires, and storms grow stronger. Crops fail in key regions. Water runs short. People move to escape heat or hunger. These changes put pressure on governments. When enough stress builds, countries can break. Conflict follows. Resource depletion adds more risk. Oil, clean water, topsoil, and rare minerals support modern life. These are not unlimited. As demand rises and supply shrinks, systems stretch, prices rise, people lose access. That tension fuels unrest. Economic systems also face pressure. Debt grows, inequality rises, basic needs become harder to meet. As trust in systems falls, so does stability. People turn to extreme solutions. They lose faith in rules. They look for blame, not repair. Technology moves fast, but it can also make collapse harder to stop. Misinformation spreads fast. Fear grows quickly. Governments struggle to control panic or false belief. Cyber attacks can shut down power or banking. The more we depend on these systems, the more fragile we become. Pandemics remind us that systems can fail fast. COVID-19 showed how a virus can move around the world and disrupt everything: work, travel, health, trade. Some systems held, others broke. One major exchange between powers could destroy cities, poison land, and break economies. Even a limited war could cause global fallout through smoke, crop failure, and panic. The weapons exist. The systems to control them rely on people. Mistakes happen. Each problem on its own might not cause collapse, but together they increase risk. Collapse often comes not from one blow, but from a mix of stress that the system can't handle. A drought weakens crops. An economic crisis cuts aid. A war breaks out. People flee. Trust vanishes. Leaders fight each other. The system unravels. Some people imagine collapse as a single day when everything stops. But most collapses are slow. Food becomes more expensive. Jobs vanish. Roads break. Services fail. People adapt, but life gets harder. Over time, the world people knew is gone. It did not explode. It faded. We live in a unique time. We can talk across the world in seconds. We can travel across continents in hours. We can send machines into space. But the same tools that make life easy also add pressure. Growth is no longer local. It is global. So is collapse. In past falls, survivors could move to new land, start fresh, and rebuild. But now, there are fewer frontiers. Most land is used or claimed. Climate change affects all regions. If the system fails, there may be no safe place to start over. We might not face the end of the human race, but the end of global systems that make modern life possible is enough. Most people assume that collapse is rare, but history shows it is common. Civilizations are not permanent. They depend on balance between people, nature, and the systems they build. When that balance breaks, collapse follows. The question is not if, but when, and how bad. You might not notice it right away. The stores still open, the lights stay on, the internet works. But small changes add up. Roads get worse. Food costs more. Crime rises. Officials speak in vague terms. People grow more angry. Some leave cities. Some join groups. Some lose hope. This is how collapse begins, not with fire from the sky, but with a slow loss of trust, a slow drop in living standards, and a slow rise in fear. People remember a better time, but they don't see a way back. They adjust, they survive, but the old world does not return. Apocalypse sounds final, but it just means a major shift, a breaking point after which the old order no longer holds. That kind of shift has happened before. It is happening now in some places. It will happen again. Civilizations fall. Ours is no different. Memory feels solid. You remember a birthday party, the face of a teacher, or a trip to the beach. You can picture the colors, the sounds, the smell of the air. It feels like a recording you can replay. But memory doesn't work that way. It isn't a file stored in your brain. It's a reconstruction, a guess based on traces, feelings, and scattered pieces. Each time you recall a memory, you rebuild it, and each time you change it. False memories are not just mistakes. They can feel as strong and clear as real ones. You might be certain something happened. You might feel it shaped who you are, but that event may have never taken place, or it may have happened in a different way. The details you trust most may be the ones your brain filled in later. In one study, researchers told people about events from their childhood. Some events were real, provided by family members. Others were fake. Over time, some participants remembered the fake events. They described them in detail, even adding new elements. They were not lying. They truly believed the events had happened. This happens because memory is not built to be exact. It is built to be useful. You remember the gist, the feeling, the outcome. But the setting, the faces, the timing, all of that can shift. Your brain links memories to other memories. It fills in blanks with logic or emotion. It updates old memories with new information. Imagine you remember your grandmother giving you a red scarf at age 7. You picture the kitchen, you hear her voice, but years later, you learn she never gave you a scarf. It was your aunt, or it was blue, or it happened when you were 10. That memory still feels real, but it's wrong. It's a blend of truth, mistake, and guesswork. Sometimes false memories come from outside. Someone might tell you a story often enough that you begin to think you remember it yourself. They say, "You cried when the balloon popped," and after hearing it for years, you see it in your mind. The image grows stronger each time. Eventually, you're sure you remember crying, the color of the balloon, the sound it made. Photos can also create false memories. You see an old picture of a picnic. Later, you remember being there. You recall the ants on the blanket, the taste of lemonade, the way the grass felt. But you weren't at that picnic. You saw the photo, built a scene around it, and claimed it as memory. The brain can't always tell the difference between a real moment and a vivid suggestion. Movies and books can influence memory too. You watch a film set in the 1980s and later confuse those scenes with parts of your own life. The fashion, the music, the style of houses all mix with your own memories. Over time, You add new details that never existed. You might think you had a toy you only ever saw in a commercial. You might think you met someone who only reminds you of a character. The Mandela effect is a well-known case of shared false memory. Large groups of people remember something that never happened. Many say they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. He didn't. He died decades later. Others remember a children's book titled The Berenstain Bears, but the actual name is the Berenstain Bears. These aren't simple spelling errors. People remember the name, the pronunciation, even how the cover looked, but they're wrong. There are theories to explain this. One is that people mix similar information. Another is that language patterns lead to expectations. Names like Einstein are common, so Berenstain feels right. But the deeper point is that many people can remember something clearly and all be wrong. This matters in real life. In courtrooms, eyewitness memory can decide a verdict. But memory is not reliable. People recall the wrong face. They remember a car being red instead of blue. They say it happened in the afternoon when it was morning. These are not lies. They are errors the brain makes while trying to be helpful. Stress, time, and suggestion make those errors more likely. Even strong emotional memories can be false. People often remember where they were during major events, an attack, a natural disaster, a famous death. These memories feel sharp and detailed, but when tested, they often contain errors. Over time, the brain blends personal feelings with the facts. The result feels stronger than normal memory, but is less accurate. Sleep, mood, and health all affect memory. Lack of sleep weakens your brain's ability to store events. Bad mood can focus you on certain details and erase others. Trauma can distort time and place. You might remember the pain, the fear, the sound, but not where you were or who was there. Or you might remember being outside when you were indoors. These are not signs of weakness. They are ways the brain tries to cope. Memory also shifts to protect identity. If you see yourself as honest, your brain may adjust a memory where you lied. You may forget the lie or change the details. If you see yourself as brave, your memory may highlight moments of courage and downplay fear. These shifts are not conscious. They help maintain a story about who you are, but they also move you away from the truth. We like to think that memory is solid, that it grounds us, but it's more like a map drawn from memory, not a photo. It shows the major roads, the places that mattered, but the paths may curve wrong. Some buildings may be missing. Others may appear where they never stood. You navigate by this map, but you can never be sure it matches the ground. This doesn't mean memory has no value. It guides you. It connects you to others. It helps form identity. But it's not perfect. It changes. It breaks. It fills gaps with best guesses. You live inside a story shaped by memory, and that story is always being edited, even if you don't notice. Some of your most cherished memories may not be real. That doesn't make them meaningless. They still shape who you are. They still feel true. But they may be built on errors, changes, or things that never happened. The mind is not a camera. It is a storyteller. And the story often takes a shape that feels right, even if the facts are wrong. You think you make choices. You decide what to eat, when to speak, how to act. It feels like you weigh options and pick the one you want. But what if that feeling is just a trick? What if every decision you make was already set in motion before you were aware of it? No free will, just the slow unfolding of biology, chemistry, and experience. Your brain is a machine. It runs on cells, signals, and rules. Neurons fire when triggered by input. That input comes from your senses, your memories, your body. You don't choose to feel hunger or fear. Those are responses. They happen because of how your body works. Your thoughts follow the same pattern. One thought leads to the next. You can't pick what thought comes to mind. you just notice it. Science has tested this. In one study, researchers asked people to press a button at a time of their choosing. The subjects believed they acted freely. But brain scans showed that the decision to press the button happened in the brain before the subject became aware of it. The brain made the choice. The feeling of deciding came later. It was added on top, like a caption after a photo. This suggests that your sense of choice may be delayed. You believe you control your actions, but the brain prepares those actions in advance. By the time you notice your intention, the process has already begun. You are not the cause. You are the observer. Now think about what shapes your brain. You didn't choose your genes. You didn't pick your parents or your culture. You didn't decide your early memories or what language you learned first. All of that shaped your brain. Your fears, your habits, your beliefs, each one has a cause. If you grew up in a different place with different input, you would be someone else. You would act and think in a new way, not because you chose to, but because your environment formed you. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a street. One picks up trash, the other throws it. You might say the first made a good choice, but what if he was raised to value order and taught to help others? What if the second was raised with anger and taught that rules are a joke? Each action came from a long line of causes. If you trace them back, you may not find a point where either person stood outside the system and picked freely. Even your values come from somewhere. You say honesty matters, but you learned that from someone. You feel pride or shame because of how others responded to your past actions. Your goals, your dreams, your taste in music, none of them formed in a vacuum. You are not a blank slate choosing from a menu. You are a product of inputs. The feeling of free will is real. But that doesn't mean it reflects how things work. Some argue that unpredictability proves freedom. Quantum physics shows that not everything is fixed. At small scales, particles behave in random ways. But randomness is not the same as freedom. If a choice is random, it's not under your control. It's still not something you picked. So neither strict order nor pure chance gives you free will. In both cases, you're just riding the wave. People resist this idea. It feels wrong. If you don't have free will, then how do you explain guilt or praise? If someone robs a store, can you blame them? If someone saves a child, do they deserve credit? The answers get harder. You may still need rules, jails, and praise, but the reason shifts. You don't punish to balance a moral scale. You punish to protect others or to shape future behavior. Praise works the same way. It's not a reward for free choice. It's a tool that teaches others what to value. This shift matters in how we see people. If someone acts badly, you might stop seeing them as evil. You might see them as shaped by pain, error, or lack of support. That doesn't excuse harm. It means that fixing harm takes more than anger. It takes understanding the system that created the action. The same is true for success. A person who climbs high did not start from nowhere. They had support, tools, and conditions that led to that path. They worked, yes, but the drive to work also came from somewhere. Some people find this view bleak. If you have no free will, does life lose meaning? But meaning doesn't vanish. You still feel pain. You still enjoy love. You still hope and fear. Those things matter, even if they arise from causes outside your control. A sunrise still moves you, even if your awe is built from neurons and light. The beauty doesn't go away. It just has a source. Others say that even if free will is an illusion, it's a useful one. Believing you choose helps you plan, act, and grow. It keeps you moving. But it may help to know that choice is not magic. It's part of a long line of causes. That knowledge can build compassion. You can stop asking, why didn't they choose better? And start asking, what led them to this point and how can it change? When you look closely, even simple acts show the chain. You reach for a glass, Why? You feel thirsty. Why? Your body lacks water. Why now? You walked outside. The sun made you sweat. You didn't choose the heat or the walk. You reacted to them. And that reaction shaped what you did next. This doesn't mean you are a robot. It means that even your idea of freedom has rules. You think, you plan, you feel. But those thoughts, plans, and feelings follow a path set by your body and past. The loop is tight. The system is deep. The self is real. But it's not free in the way you think. You are not the author of your mind. You are the result. You are not a captain steering the ship. You are the ship. And every wave that hits you, every fact, every fear, every joy, moves you in ways you may never notice. You still sail. You still cross the sea. But the wind and current are not yours to command. You trust your senses. You look around, touch objects, hear sounds, and build a picture of the world. You trust your memory. You believe that past events happened as you recall them. You trust logic. If something is true and something else depends on it, you expect the second thing to be true too. You trust science. You assume it describes reality through careful testing. But what if all of these things are flawed? Not just sometimes, but always. If everything you know is wrong in some deep way, start with your senses. You see the sky as blue, but color is not in the sky. It's in your brain. Light of different wavelengths hits your eyes. Nerves send signals. Your brain turns those signals into color. What you see is a model. The same is true for sound. Vibrations in the air reach your ears. Your brain gives those vibrations meaning. Voice, music, noise. But there is no sound in the air. There are only waves. Sound is something your brain adds. Optical illusions show how easily your vision can be tricked. You see motion where there is none. You see straight lines as bent. You see shapes that don't exist. Your brain fills in gaps and edits input. It does this not to deceive you, but to help you move through the world. Still, it proves that your view of the world is not direct. It's filtered, shaped, and sometimes wrong. Touch is no better. Your skin senses pressure, temperature, and texture, but it doesn't tell you everything. Pain can appear with no cause. Limbs you've lost can still feel present. You can think someone touched you when no one did. Your sense of your own body is not fixed. It shifts with focus, mood, or injury. Memory is just as weak. You think of it as a record, but it's more like a story told from scattered notes. Your brain stores fragments, not full scenes. Each time you remember something, you rebuild it. That process adds errors. It pulls in new ideas. It changes what you think happened. You can feel sure about a memory that never took place, and you can forget things that did. Your thoughts follow patterns too. You use logic to reach conclusions, but logic depends on assumptions. If those assumptions are wrong, your result is wrong. Even basic logic fails if the inputs are false. If you assume the sun rises because of a rooster's crow, your pattern will make sense until the day the rooster is silent and the sun still rises. Your brain also prefers stories that feel smooth. You seek cause and effect, even where none exists. Bias shapes thinking in ways you don't see. You remember things that support your view. You ignore things that don't. You accept simple answers over complex ones, even when they're wrong. You judge based on recent events, not full patterns. You mistake confidence for truth. These habits are not flaws in character. They are features of the mind. They help you decide quickly, but they also lead you off course. Now look at science. It has built great tools and deep knowledge, but it is not perfect. It depends on measurement. Every tool has limits. You measure time in seconds, but time might not move in steady steps. You measure space with rulers, but space might not be smooth. You assume mass, charge, and force behave in ways you can predict. But at small scales, particles don't follow the same rules. They flicker between states. They appear and vanish. You can measure one thing or another, but not both. The act of measuring can change the result. Theories rise and fall. Newton's laws worked for centuries. Then Einstein showed they were close, but not exact. Quantum mechanics works well for small things, but clashes with gravity. These gaps don't mean science is fake, but they show that what we know now may not match what is true. We build models, we test them, we fix them when they break. That process is strong, but it never ends. So each truth may just be a better guess. Even math, which seems solid, might rest on shaky ground. It starts with axioms, basic truths you agree to. But Gödel's theorems show that no system can prove all truths about itself. There are always limits. Some problems have no final answer. Others might depend on how you frame the question. This doesn't mean math fails, but it shows that even pure reason can only go so far. Language adds more distortion. Words seem clear, but meanings shift. You say tree, and others picture something slightly different. You describe a feeling, but no one feels it the same way. You write facts, but readers bring their own views. Every message passes through filters: culture, mood, bias, and history. So even shared knowledge bends in transit. All this leads to a strange thought. You may never access the world as it truly is. You live inside a model built by your brain, shaped by biology, refined by habit, and reinforced by belief. You can test that model, refine it, and use it to survive, but you cannot step outside it. You don't see reality. You see what your senses and brain can process. You see what evolution needed you to see, not what's true, but what works. Imagine a creature that sees heat instead of color. Its world would look nothing like yours. Or think of a bat, using sound to see its environment. Its reality would be shaped by echo and rhythm. Their truth would not be your truth, yet both might work just as well. This shows that perception is not fixed. It's a function of what helps you move, eat, mate, and live. Even time may be an illusion. You feel it move forward. You remember the past, not the future. But physics doesn't say time must flow. It treats all moments as fixed. You move through them like frames of film. The sense of flow comes from memory, not from nature. The arrow of time may be something your brain adds to make sense of change. In dreams, your mind builds full worlds. You see, feel, speak, and believe. Only later do you realize it was false. What makes waking life more real? Just its consistency? Its pain? Its agreement with others? Those are weak tests. You might dream now, or live in a simulation, or build a false model on flawed input. You cannot step outside your mind to check. You cannot know if your logic fits reality, or if reality fits your logic. You cannot know if your science has found truth, or just a deeper fiction. You cannot trust memory, or sense, or thought, without knowing what shaped them. Everything you know might be wrong, not in pieces, but at the root. The model might be useful. It might help you act. But you cannot prove it is real. You can only live inside it and guess. You wake up each morning and find the world still here. The sky stays blue, the ground holds steady, and the stars shine at night. You assume the universe exists whether or not you notice it. But the strong Anthropic Principle asks something else. What if the universe only exists because you observe it? What if your presence is not just part of the story, but the reason the story unfolds at all? This idea starts from physics. The laws of nature seem tuned for life. Gravity is just strong enough to form stars, but not so strong they collapse too quickly. The strength of the electromagnetic force allows atoms to form and hold together. If you change any of the basic constants even slightly, life as we know it becomes impossible. No stars, no chemistry, no stable planets. the odds of getting everything right by chance seem small. So the question arises, why does the universe work so well for us? The weak Anthropic Principle gives a simple answer. You observe the universe because you exist. If the universe didn't allow life, no one would be here to ask the question. You're not seeing a special place. You're only able to see the kind of place where observers can exist. That version doesn't require anything unusual. It just filters out the places where no one can survive. The strong version goes further. It says the universe must allow conscious observers, or else it wouldn't exist. Your awareness is not a side effect, it's a condition. In this view, the universe requires you to look at it. Without observation, there may be no reality to speak of. Your presence makes the world possible. This idea links closely with quantum mechanics. At the quantum level, particles don't have fixed states. They exist in probabilities. A particle might be here or there. Only when observed does it take a specific position. This is called wave function collapse. It's been shown in experiments. Until you measure a quantum system, it remains in a mix of possibilities. When you observe it, you get one clear result. This leads to a strange thought. If observation turns potential into reality, then maybe observation is required for the world to exist in any clear form. Without observers, the universe stays in a cloud of possible states. Nothing solid, nothing fixed. In the lab, this seems to apply to tiny systems, atoms, particles, photons. But what if it also applies at larger scales? Some thinkers say the same rule might apply to the whole universe. In that case, consciousness wouldn't just witness reality. It would help define it. Imagine a universe with no observers. No eyes to see, no minds to ask questions. Would stars shine in such a place? Would time pass? Would there be form, space, or motion? Or would it all remain as a set of unrealized possibilities? Like a book that's never opened, or a script that's never read. Now imagine that consciousness arises. A mind forms, and it begins to notice things. With that awareness, the world settles into shape. The sun burns, the earth spins, the laws click into place. Reality becomes actual, not just potential. The strong Anthropic Principle suggests this may not be coincidence. The act of observation may be a basic force, like gravity or magnetism. This doesn't mean the universe revolves around you in a personal sense. It doesn't say the world exists for your benefit. It says your ability to observe is linked to the universe's ability to be real. You're not the cause of everything, but your awareness might be part of how everything holds together. It's hard to prove or disprove this. You can't step outside the universe to see if it would keep going without observers. You only ever find it from inside, already shaped, already seen. You can't rewind the tape and run it without people. You're always part of the picture. Some try to test these ideas through logic or simulation. They ask if consciousness could arise in a universe that's purely physical, or if awareness needs to be built into the rules from the start. Others look for ways to link observation and time. Does the past exist in full detail before anyone looks back on it? Or does memory and measurement build the past as much as the present? This touches on questions of solipsism. Is the world only real because you are here to see it? Or is it real in some larger way, with or without you? But the strong Anthropic Principle doesn't say only you matter. It says that observers in general are part of the fabric of the universe. Life, thought, and awareness are not random additions. They are required elements. You can run a thought experiment. Imagine you die. The world continues. Other people remain. They still observe. But what if there were no minds at all? What if nothing anywhere could form a thought or ask a question? Would the stars still shine? Would time still pass? Or would the structure of the universe fall away, like a stage left dark when the actors walk off. This idea reshapes how you see science. You stop thinking of the universe as a machine that runs by itself. Instead, you see it as something that unfolds with you inside it, dependent not just on matter and motion, but on meaning and attention. Observation becomes a kind of participation. You're not outside the system watching. You're part of it. Your awareness gives the system focus. This doesn't erase science or logic. It doesn't deny cause and effect. It doesn't say thoughts create objects from nothing. But it suggests that awareness plays a deeper role than we thought, not just as a tool to understand the universe, but as a condition for the universe to be understandable, and maybe even real. The strong anthropic principle is not easy to test. It sits at the edge of physics and philosophy. Some dismiss it as circular. Of course, we observe a world that allows observers. But others say the idea pushes us to think harder about what it means to be here. If consciousness is not just an outcome, but a requirement, then the act of noticing becomes a central part of the story, not just of your life, but of the universe itself. People often say that if there's a God, it must be good. That idea comforts many. A kind creator means the world has meaning, and suffering has a purpose. But if you look at how the world actually works, the image becomes harder to hold. Pain is everywhere. Children die. People suffer in ways that seem cruel and random. Disease spreads. Storms destroy homes. Animals kill each other to survive. These things don't seem like the plan of a kind and caring mind. If a God exists, you have to ask what kind of God it is. Not the one described in stories or wishes, but the one whose presence you'd infer from the facts of life. Would you say the world looks designed with love? Or does it look like something shaped by indifference or even cruelty? Take a newborn child who dies after 2 weeks. No one learns a lesson. No good comes from it. The parents suffer. The child never speaks or chooses anything. Was this part of a plan? Would a loving God allow this for a purpose? Or is it just a result of biology, mutation, and chance? If a God exists and has power to stop it but does not, what does that say? Many religious answers claim we can't see the whole picture. They say that suffering builds character, tests faith, or serves a greater good. But this does not hold up in many cases. Some people suffer their whole lives with no rest. Some die in fear or pain without comfort. To say this is all part of a larger plan is to excuse what looks on the surface like neglect or cruelty. You can look at nature and find more signs. Parasites eat their hosts alive. Some insects lay eggs inside other animals, so their young can eat their way out. Predators hunt and tear apart prey. Many animals die soon after birth. These are not rare events. They are the basic process of life. If this system was built, what kind of builder would make it this way? One answer is that there is no builder at all. Life evolved through chance and selection. The universe formed through blind physical laws. Suffering is not part of a plan. It just happens. But if you do believe in a God, this makes things more complicated. You must ask whether that God watches and does nothing, or watches and approves. Some thinkers have said that if a God exists, it might not be good. It might enjoy watching pain. It might treat creation like a game. Or it might be so different from us that it does not even notice our suffering. It could be a mind with no empathy, no warmth, and no sense of right or wrong as we understand it. Imagine a person creates a world inside a computer. They watch the people inside suffer and struggle. They could fix it, but they don't. They treat it as entertainment. Most would say this person is cruel. Now imagine that person is a God, and the world inside is ours. If suffering is allowed, is that God still good? Some argue that morality only applies to humans, not to gods. But if a God is beyond morality, then we have no reason to call it good. We can't say it's kind or fair if those words mean nothing to it. If God is above moral law, then it cannot also be the source of moral law. We would have to admit that good and evil are human ideas, not divine rules. Others say that God gives us free will, and suffering is our fault. But free will does not explain disease, disasters, or the suffering of animals. It doesn't explain birth defects, famine, or earthquakes. These things are built into the world itself. If God made the system and knew the outcome, the blame still falls there. To create a world with built-in suffering and then claim innocence is not honest. Think about natural disasters. A flood kills thousands. A virus wipes out entire communities. No crime was committed. No lesson was learned. People prayed and still died. To say God works in mysterious ways avoids the question. If we saw a person cause such damage, you would call it evil or at least deeply uncaring. Why do we excuse the same behavior in a God? You can also ask why God would hide. If God cares, why let people wonder? Why leave room for doubt? Some say faith is the point, but belief without evidence helps no one. It leads to confusion, fear, and conflict. A loving God could speak clearly. It could stop the wars fought in its name. It could prevent pain caused by confusion. Yet silence remains. Children are taught to see God as a parent. A good parent protects, guides, and comforts. But many people suffer without comfort. They cry out and hear nothing back. If God is a parent, then it is absent. If God is a creator, it seems more like a distant engineer than a loving guide. Some people say God suffers with us, that God feels pain when we do. But this raises another problem. Why create the system in the first place? If God hurts when we hurt, why allow so much hurt? Why not design a world where love and growth happen without so much pain? If it's possible to make a better system and God does not, then we are left again with indifference, or worse. Others suggest God is learning, that the world is an experiment and the suffering teaches God something. But this assumes God is not all-knowing. If God needs to learn, then God is limited. If God is limited, it is not the God described in most faiths. And if we are part of a test, it's one where we did not agree to the terms. You might look at history and see progress, but the cost has been high. Slavery, war, genocide, and torture have marked every era. People have cried out for help that never came. If God watched, God did not stop it. If God could not stop it, then God is not all-powerful. If God could but didn't, then God is not good. Some people find comfort in mystery. They say we cannot understand God's ways. But if we can't judge God's actions, then we can't praise them either. We can't call God good if we have no idea what good means in that context. We can only describe what we see, and what we see, often, is suffering without purpose. If a God exists, the evidence points not to love, but to distance. The world does not look cared for. It looks like a place built with no regard for pain, or worse, built by something that sees pain and does nothing, or something that created pain on purpose. A God like that might exist, but it would not be good. You wake up each day and feel like someone is home. You think, reflect, plan, and wonder. You ask who you are and why you're here. That inner voice feels central. You assume it matters. But some scientists and philosophers think consciousness might be useless, not in the sense that it's bad, but in the sense that it doesn't do anything. It may not help you survive. It may not change your behavior. It may just be along for the ride. Evolution works by selecting traits that help with survival and reproduction. Sharp teeth, fast legs, strong arms, these offer clear advantages. You survive longer, pass on your genes, and shape the next generation. But does being self-aware help in that way? Does it let you catch more food or avoid more danger? Or is it just a side effect of other changes in the brain? You can build a machine that solves problems, learns from mistakes, and adapts to new input. You can design it to hunt, avoid hazards, and plan ahead. It does all of this without knowing it exists. It has no inner world, no thoughts, no voice inside, just input, processing, and output. That kind of system is not conscious, but it can still do everything needed to survive. Many animals show complex behavior without signs of self-awareness. Ants build cities, defend them, and farm other insects. Birds navigate across continents, solve puzzles, and use tools. Octopuses open jars and escape tanks. These acts require memory, planning, and learning, but none of them require the animal to reflect on its own existence. They don't ask why, they just do. Even humans often act without conscious thought. You drive home while your mind wanders. You catch a glass before it falls without planning. You solve a math problem, then only later realize how you did it. Most of your body's work, digestion, heartbeat, balance, temperature, is automatic. Consciousness doesn't steer it. Most of your choices start before you become aware of them. Some researchers believe the brain evolved complex ways to manage behavior. Networks formed to handle memory, planning, attention, and emotion. These systems work together to guide action. Consciousness may have come from that complexity, not as a tool, but as a byproduct. Like heat from a machine, it was not the goal. It just showed up. You feel like your thoughts guide your actions, but when scientists look closely, they find something else. In lab tests, people often move before they feel like they made the choice. The brain sends a signal to the muscles before the subject says, "I decided." The decision happens under the surface, then bubbles up into awareness. The sense of will comes after the act, not before it. This suggests that your conscious mind might just narrate what already happened. It gives a story to the body's actions. It makes sense of things after the fact. You believe you chose, but the choice was made before you noticed it. That doesn't mean you're a puppet. It means the part of you that feels like you might not be the main driver. Your brain handles most tasks quietly. Consciousness just watches and comments. It's like a sports announcer who thinks they control the game. If that's true, then why do we have this inner voice at all? Maybe it's just a glitch in how we model the world. The brain tracks patterns, weather, sound, motion, other people. It also tracks itself. It builds a model of its own state to predict behavior. That model might feel like a self, but it's not the thing doing the work. It's just a mirror. This view helps explain why consciousness seems tied to language. When you think, you often think in words. You describe your thoughts to yourself. But language is a social tool. You learn to talk to others before you learn to talk to yourself. So your inner voice might be a copy of your outer one. You practice talking by talking to yourself. The mind hears itself and thinks, "I am in here." In that case, consciousness might exist mainly because of social pressure. You need to explain your actions to others. You need to predict what others will do. The brain builds models of other minds. It learns to say, "She thinks that I know," or "He wants me to help." These loops of thought require complex tracking. As a side effect, the brain tracks itself. It says, "I think," even if that thought plays no part in the choice. This helps with group life. You don't need to be right. You just need to sound like you meant what you did. Consciousness gives you a way to explain your own behavior, even if you didn't control it. It offers a clean story. It keeps social bonds in place, but it doesn't steer the ship. If true, this has strange effects. You might feel joy or pain deeply, but your feelings might not guide action. Your suffering may not help you survive. It just happens. It might not be a warning. It might be noise. You cry, not to fix a problem, but because the system that produces tears got triggered. You feel sad, not because sadness helps, but because your brain can feel. This idea also helps explain why it's so hard to define consciousness. No one can find where it starts or ends. No one can measure it. It has no clear shape. It doesn't respond to the outside world in consistent ways. Some people are awake and show no signs of awareness. Others seem aware, but have no memory of it later. Consciousness is hard to test because it may not do anything. You think your mind is the center. You feel like it makes the choices. But when you dig into the layers of the brain, you don't find a control room. You find loops of activity. You find signals firing, memories forming, habits repeating. You find circuits built from experience. Consciousness might just sit at the edge, watching it all unfold. If that's the case, then self-awareness is not a gift or a skill. It's a shadow. It's what happens when the brain gets complex enough to notice itself. It doesn't help you hunt, flee, or fight. It doesn't boost your strength or speed. It just tells a story after the fact. You don't need consciousness to survive. Bacteria thrive without it. Plants grow, move, and defend themselves with no awareness. Even animals with no brain at all show behavior. The line between living and knowing is not clear. The line between doing and being aware of doing might not matter at all. So you feel like you are in there, but the you that feels that may not serve a function. It might be an echo. It might be noise. The body moves, the brain fires, the system runs, and the voice that watches thinks it's in charge, when really it's just watching the sparks. You believe you are a person. You have thoughts, memories, feelings, and a sense of who you are. You think you make choices. You feel pain, joy, regret, and hope. All of this feels solid and personal. But when you break it down, it starts to look like a process. Each thought follows from the last. Each feeling rises from a pattern. This leads to a different idea. The self might be an algorithm. An algorithm is a set of instructions. It takes input, processes it, and gives output. A calculator follows an algorithm. So does a search engine. These systems respond based on rules. They don't need to think. They just run. If you look closely at your own mind, you may see the same structure. You respond to the world. Someone speaks to you, and you reply. You feel hunger and find food. You hear a loud sound and flinch. These responses are not random. They follow patterns shaped by your biology and your past. You might think you choose your actions. Most choices follow rules you didn't invent. You are born with some, and others come from experience. Your brain is a physical system. It takes signals from the body, processes them, and sends instructions back. It stores past signals and compares them to new ones. It predicts what will happen next and decides what to do. This process feels like thought, but it runs like code. It reacts to input and updates over time. That's what algorithms do. Imagine you hear a familiar song. You feel nostalgia, but that feeling is not magic. It comes from a link in your memory. The sound triggers a stored pattern. That pattern connects to a feeling from the past. The brain matches the input to a stored response. This happens fast and without effort. You call it emotion, but it might be closer to a lookup function. The same applies to identity. You believe you are the same person from year to year, but the brain is always changing. Your cells replace themselves. Your beliefs shift. Your memories fade or change. What stays the same is a pattern, a process that updates itself while holding a basic shape. It's like software that patches itself but keeps the same name. You feel continuous, but you are not fixed. You are a running system. Think about learning. You touch a hot stove and feel pain. Next time, you avoid it. This is feedback. It adjusts your behavior. Your brain stores the result of that event and uses it to update future actions. The process is simple. Input, error, correction. Over time, it builds a model of what works. That's how machine learning works too. The algorithm tests options and keeps the ones that give better results. Even complex choices follow patterns. You may feel you have reasons for your actions, but those reasons can be tracked. You might vote a certain way, prefer one flavor over another, or trust one person more than someone else. If someone had full access to your past, your body, and your surroundings, they could predict your response. The idea that you are a free and unique self might just be a byproduct of limited knowledge. You feel unpredictable only because the system is complex, not because it's free. Now imagine a copy of your mind, a simulation. If your self is a process, it should be possible to recreate that process in a machine. You'd need the same inputs, the same structure, and the same rules for updating. If the copy gives the same responses, makes the same decisions, and remembers the same past, then is it still you? If you say no, then you must explain what's missing. If you say yes, then the self is not the brain. It's the algorithm the brain runs. This leads to a deeper thought. If the self is an algorithm, then it doesn't need a specific material. A carbon brain and a silicon machine could run the same code. The code would define the self. The platform wouldn't matter. That's how computers work. The same app runs on many devices. The behavior stays the same. The self, then, could be portable. Some people find this idea cold. It reduces love, pain, and meaning to patterns. But patterns can still have value. A melody is just a pattern of notes, but it can move you. A story is a sequence of words, but it can change how you see the world. The fact that something runs by rules doesn't make it shallow. It just makes it repeatable. The mystery is not lost. It shifts. Others fear that this idea removes responsibility. If the self is just a process, are you responsible for your actions? But responsibility is also part of the algorithm. Social systems use feedback to shape behavior. Praise and punishment teach future choices. These responses feed into the system. They help guide it. A moral code is just another rule set that helps the algorithm run in a stable way. You might also wonder what this means for death. If the self is an algorithm, and if the algorithm ends, is that the end of you? Yes, unless the process is copied or preserved. When the body fails, the system stops. But in theory, if the pattern could be saved and restarted, the self could return. That version of you might not wake up from your point of view, but it would act, think, and speak like you. It would carry the same memories. From the outside, the self would still run. Language reflects this idea more than we admit. You talk about being wired a certain way or processing a thought. You say, "I'm not built for that," or "I need to reboot." These phrases treat the mind as a machine. Not by accident. It behaves like one. Every habit, reflex, and belief is part of your code. They shape how you respond to life. You can update them. You can debug your own thoughts. But the change is still a process. You run the update because of input, pain, joy, advice, experience. You never step outside the system. You are the system. The brain runs with layers of feedback. It rewires itself with experience. It stores probabilities, compares predictions to outcomes, and revises its model of the world. All of this happens in real time without a central control. You don't need a ghost in the machine. The machine is enough. The self is not a soul. It's not a spark. It's a loop. It's a structure that tracks the world and adjusts. It makes plans, forms goals, and stores stories. It adds new input, and the pattern shifts. That's all it takes. You don't need magic. You just need motion. You are not a mystery. You are not a solid thing. You are a pattern of steps, a live process, a running code, an algorithm that watches itself and says, "I am me." Your body is not the goal. It's not the main event. It's a tool, a container built to carry something else. That something is DNA. Every part of you, from your bones to your thoughts, exists because it helped your ancestors pass genes to the next generation. The shape of your face, the structure of your limbs, your fears and desires, they all exist because they helped your genes survive. You are not the driver. You are the vehicle. Genes don't think. They don't want. They don't have goals, but they behave as if they do. Genes that copied themselves stuck around. Genes that failed disappeared. Over time, only the ones good at copying lasted. They used bodies like tools. They built nervous systems to guide behavior, eyes to track prey, skin to protect organs. In humans, they built minds that feel love, anger, fear, and pride, all to help bodies survive long enough to reproduce. Your sense of self tells you that you act for your own sake. You eat when you're hungry, sleep when tired, and chase goals that feel personal. But those urges didn't come from nowhere. Hunger exists to make you seek food. Pleasure exists to make you repeat actions that increase your chance to live or mate. Pain stops you from damaging the body that carries the genes. The drive to protect your children is strong because they carry half your DNA. This idea comes from evolutionary biology. One of its most direct forms is the theory of the selfish gene, which says natural selection acts at the level of the gene, not the individual. Your body is not the unit that matters. It's a short-lived wrapper. Genes exist across generations. A gene that builds a strong, fast, or clever body has a better chance of lasting. A gene that helps a parent care for its child also survives more often. Bodies die, genes move forward. This explains things that otherwise seem strange. Why do parents sacrifice for children? Because the child carries the same genes. Why do siblings help each other? Because they share a high percentage of DNA. In some animals, sterile individuals, like worker bees, live only to support the queen. They don't pass on their own genes, but they help someone who does. From the gene's view, that still counts. Even behavior that looks selfless may not be. Acts of kindness often follow patterns that help kin gain trust or improve status. Helping others makes people more likely to help you in return. In small groups, generosity could improve survival. Over time, the genes that supported these patterns became common. The feeling of doing good became part of the toolset, not because genes care, but because the pattern helped them persist. Sexual attraction works the same way. You're drawn to features that signal health or fertility. You're pulled toward certain smells, voices, or shapes. These are not random. They reflect ancient patterns that helped animals choose good mates. The details change across cultures, but the basic drive doesn't. You think you fall in love, but from the gene's view, love is a strategy for long-term pair bonding, a way to raise offspring with shared care. Even your sense of identity might be built around your gene's interests. You feel shame when you fail, pride when you succeed, and guilt when you hurt others. These emotions push you to behave in ways that keep you in the group, where your survival chances improve. Exile in early human groups could mean death, so your mind evolved to avoid rejection. Again, the gene gains if the body and its behavior fit the social system well enough to pass on its code. You also crave meaning. You ask big questions. You build religions, stories, and laws. But much of that may be byproducts of complex brains built to manage social life. A brain that models the minds of others has to track intent, cause, and future risk. Once that system gets complex enough, it starts modeling itself. It begins to ask what it's for. It builds a self-image. But the original goal was simple: stay alive, stay social, and keep the genes moving forward. You see life as your story, but evolution sees life as a long chain of replications. You are one node on that chain. You may feel unique, but much of your behavior is shaped by patterns passed down over millions of years. The urge to find a partner, raise children, protect your family, gain respect, avoid danger, these are old tools. They helped your ancestors succeed. You inherited them like bones and skin. Some of this may feel cold. It removes mystery from things you value, but it doesn't make them less real. You still love your family. You still care about your future. The fact that these feelings came from survival needs doesn't cancel them. It just explains where they came from. The tool doesn't know it's a tool. The car doesn't know it's carrying passengers. It just runs. Think about your daily life. You wake up, eat, move through the world, respond to others, seek comfort, avoid harm. These actions feel personal, but they follow patterns shaped by gene survival. You protect your skin because injury lowers your chance to thrive. You form friendships because isolation risks harm. You get angry at betrayal because it breaks trust in the social group, which could harm your survival. Even art and creativity might come from these roots. A song can show skill or emotional depth, which raises social value. A painting may win status. A novel may signal intelligence or insight. These acts are not driven by genes directly, but they ride on brain systems that evolved for survival and reproduction. They are like ornaments, peacock feathers of the mind. Your death means little to your genes. They need only reach the next body. If they succeed, your genetic line continues. If not, it ends. That's the system. You are not the focus. You are the host. The genes don't care what you believe, hope, or fear. They care only whether you build a body that lasts long enough to copy them. People often seek legacy, something to leave behind, but the body already does that in its own way. Each child carries your DNA forward. That's the most basic form of legacy. Whether or not you feel proud of it, the system was built for it. Your mind may dream of more. It may create culture, memory, and art. But your body's core task was always simple. Be a good gene vehicle, long enough to hand off the code. After that, the mission ends. You live inside a story. That story includes money, countries, laws, time, and other things that feel solid. But if you look closely, none of these things are physical. You can't touch money as a concept. You can't hold a country in your hands. You can't measure a year without some agreement about how to count. These are all made-up structures, shared beliefs. They only exist because many people treat them as real. Take money. A paper bill has no value by itself. It's a printed piece of material. You can't eat it or use it for shelter. It works because everyone agrees it works. You hand someone money and they give you food or a product. Both people pretend the money has value. But that belief is a choice. It holds until people stop agreeing. In a crisis, money can become worthless overnight. If trust breaks down, the bill is just paper again. Borders are the same. You can draw a line on a map and say it marks a nation. But the earth does not come with labels. There are no colored lines on the ground. A border is just an idea backed by shared agreement, and sometimes by force. People defend it, fight over it, and die for it. But it remains an imaginary line. Move a few feet and the rules change. You are the same person, but your rights, your laws, and your identity might shift. Time is another example. You count minutes and hours as if they exist outside you. But clocks are inventions. A second is a unit we created. We based it on movement of the sun, of atoms, of machines. But the choice of unit is arbitrary. A week has 7 days because of old religious traditions. A year reflects Earth's orbit, but how we divide it is up to us. Time feels real because it's consistent. But consistency is not truth, it's structure. Look at calendars. Different cultures have used different ones. Some count from the birth of a leader, others follow the moon. The year 2025 means something in one system, but it's a number built on a story. The date has no natural force. It doesn't exist outside the human mind. Language works this way too. A word points to an object or idea, but the sound itself means nothing. Tree could have been Garn or Zal. It only works because we all agree. You learn the meaning as a child and carry it into the world, but every word is a symbol. You live in a world of symbols pretending to be facts. Names are part of this. Your name feels tied to yourself, but it's a label given by someone else. It becomes part of you because people repeat it. Over time, you believe it means you. But it's just a tag. If someone calls you by another name, you're still the same person. The name doesn't hold your thoughts or memories. It just stands in for them. Laws follow the same rule. You can be punished for breaking them, but the law itself is not a physical object. It's a set of rules written down and agreed upon by a group. Those rules change over time. What was once illegal becomes legal. What was once ignored becomes enforced. The law works because people believe in it, or fear the people who do. Now think about identity. You believe you are a certain kind of person, maybe based on gender, nationality, religion, or job. These are roles shaped by stories. Some were given to you, others you chose. But they are still roles. If you move to another place or change what you believe, the role shifts. Your core traits don't change. But the story does. Look at religion. Billions of people follow different faiths. Many believe their version is the only truth, but the details differ. Gods have names, forms, stories, and rules. Sacred texts offer guidance and meaning, but all of it depends on belief. These systems don't work in the same way a rock falls or fire burns. They work because people commit to them, follow them, and defend them. A God without believers has no temple, no voice, no law. Faith builds the system. Without that faith, the system falls. The economy is one giant shared fiction. Stock markets rise and fall on belief. A rumor can crash a currency. A promise can create wealth. Businesses value themselves based on expectations. Investors act on predictions. These actions shape real lives. But the system is abstract. It works because people believe it does. Take away the belief, and the system has no force. Even social roles are shaped by mass agreement. A judge wears a robe and gains power. A president gives orders and others obey. But the robe is cloth. The voice is just sound. The power comes from belief. You obey the judge because the group agrees that the robe means something. If that belief breaks down, the role disappears. Without belief, there is no system, only people, buildings, and voices. This doesn't mean the world is fake. The pain of losing a job, the joy of a wedding, the fear of war, these are real experiences. But they are built on frames that come from shared stories. You are not outside the system. You are part of it. You reinforce it each time you follow a rule, use money, or tell someone what year it is. Mass delusion doesn't mean madness. It means agreement. When enough people accept an idea, it becomes real in practice. You live inside layers of these agreements. Most work well. Some cause harm. But all of them depend on belief, not on nature. You can't live without them. You need structure to function. You need shared language, expectations, and tools. It helps to know what they are. A clock is not time. These are tools for living together. They work because we let them. They hold power only while we believe. When belief fades, the story ends, and we write a new one. You expect death to be the end. You stop breathing. Your heart stops. Your brain shuts down. Darkness comes and nothing follows. That's the belief that comforts many. No pain, no thought, no memory, just silence. But what if that isn't true? What if something of you continues? Your mind, your awareness, your sense of self. And what if that state is worse than anything you've known in life? Consciousness is hard to define. It's the sense that something is happening, and that it's happening to you. Pain is not just nerves firing, it's the feeling of pain. Hunger isn't just a signal from the gut. It's the urge, the ache, the waiting. That sense of being present might not stop with death. The body may decay, the brain may fail, but the process that creates awareness might not shut off cleanly. It might fracture, stretch, or slip into a state we can't describe. One where you're still there, but you can't wake up. Some people who have been near death report strange experiences. They describe floating, watching themselves from above, feeling disconnected from time. These accounts are not proof of life after death, but they suggest something else. Awareness might not vanish as fast as we think. In some cases, the brain shows activity for minutes after the heart stops. The mind may keep firing, without input, without control. What would that feel like? Trapped in silence, unable to move, speak or see, but still conscious. Now imagine that state stretched out, no sense of time, no change, just endless thought with no body, no way to act, no way to rest. You can't sleep because sleep requires a working body. You can't stop thinking because the process continues. You can't distract yourself. You just drift in a blank space, cut off from everything except your own mind. Some theories from physics suggest time is not linear. All moments may exist at once. Like frames in a film, you experience them in order only because your brain processes them that way. If that's true, then your final moment, whatever it is, may never end. You could be stuck in your last thought forever, reliving it, trapped in it, unable to escape. What if your final moment is panic, pain, regret? What if the last thing you feel is fear, and you stay there? If consciousness lingers, even in a broken form, then death may not be peace, it may be stasis. And there may be no way to tell if you're still in it. Some thinkers link this to the idea of quantum immortality. In that view, you never experience your own death. In each moment of risk, there's always some version of the universe where you survive. Your awareness moves to that branch. You don't notice the others. From your point of view, you keep living. But that doesn't mean you live well. You could survive injury after injury, fading into worse and worse versions of life. Unable to die, unable to stop. You stay conscious because there's always some path that lets you do so. This leads to a bleak possibility. Death doesn't come. You keep slipping past it, staying alive in broken, painful forms. Your body may fail, but your mind finds ways to keep going. Machines, simulations, random firings, any thread of thought lets you hold on. You don't get relief, you get endurance. And endurance, when stretched to infinity, becomes torment. Now think about brain death. People in vegetative states may show signs of minimal awareness, a flicker in a scan, a twitch in response to sound. If something of the self remains, then the person inside may still feel time pass. Minutes feel like hours, days feel like years, and there's no way to speak, no way to ask for help. From the outside, they look empty, but inside, something might watch, helpless. Some stories describe hell as a place of fire and punishment, but if you remove the myth and keep the core idea, suffering without end, you get something worse. No demons, no judgment, just isolation. Nothing to distract, nothing to hold on to. Just yourself, without context or change. That may be closer to hell than any fire. What if the brain at death releases a storm of signals, a final burst of thought, dream, and memory? If that moment stretches, it might feel like a full life, a replay of every regret, every loss, every fear. Or it might collapse into one fixed moment, a loop. You repeat the same sensation endlessly. You don't know it's happening. Or worse, you do, and can't stop it. Some speculate that advanced technology might someday trap minds. A copied brain, scanned and uploaded, might wake up in a digital space. The copy might think it's still alive, but if the system fails, or if the copy runs without limits, it may stay active in a dead environment. It can't reach out, it can't shut down. A perfect prison, not by design, but by accident. A mind running with no feedback, no goal, no rest. That may sound distant, but the idea is simple. Consciousness doesn't require meaning. It doesn't require comfort. It only needs a process that keeps going. If death disrupts the body, but not the final spark of awareness, then the outcome is unknown. We assume it stops, we hope it does, but we don't know. Sleep gives rest because the body controls the cycle. It ends, it resets. Death has no reset. If the loop of thought continues, even at a low level, then it has no stop, no rhythm, just presence without time. No one around you, no light, no dream, just the fact of being there. People fear death because it might end them, but they also hope it ends everything. Pain, worry, doubt, they want that to stop. If death doesn't stop the mind, then it doesn't bring peace. It brings a new problem, a state you can't leave, can't explain, and can't escape. You wanted silence. You got permanence. The worst part is not knowing. You can't test it. You can't ask others. You only find out when it's too late to turn back. Maybe death is empty. Maybe it's not. But if consciousness can persist in any form, there's a risk. A small chance, perhaps, but one that never goes away. Not because there's a soul, not because there's an afterlife, but because awareness is fragile and strange, and once it forms, it may not give up as easily as we think. You hear voices, see faces, and talk with people every day. You assume they think, feel, and exist just like you. But how do you know they do? You see behavior, you hear words, you respond to actions, but all of that comes through your senses. You never experience another person's mind. You only see what they show. Everything outside you could be part of a dream, or a story your mind tells itself. This is solipsism, the idea that only your own consciousness is certain. Everything else might not be real. You could be the only aware being in existence. The world around you may exist only as part of your experience. Trees, cars, cities, animals, stars. They may all be illusions created by your mind. Even the people you love, fear, or miss might just be characters in your story. They feel real because your mind made them that way. Think about your dreams. While dreaming, you see people, hear voices, and feel emotions. The dream characters respond to you. They speak, act, and even argue, but none of them are real. They're generated by your mind. You believe them in the moment. You only realize they were false when you wake up. If that's possible in a dream, why not in waking life? When you're awake, everything comes to you through perception. Light hits your eyes, sound reaches your ears, pressure touches your skin. Your brain processes the signals and builds a picture of the world, but that picture is still in your mind. You never touch the world directly. You only touch your version of it. If you've ever had a hallucination or an intense memory, you felt something that wasn't happening. It seemed real. You reacted to it. Later, you learned it wasn't true. Your mind created it without needing input from the outside. This shows your brain can make entire scenes on its own. If it can do that once, how do you know it's not doing it all the time? Even when someone speaks to you, you only hear sounds. You assume there's a mind behind those sounds, but you can't see that mind. You infer it. You guess. That guess could be wrong. A machine could speak. A puppet could move. A recording could play. The appearance of awareness does not prove it's there. Artificial intelligence adds another layer to this problem. Some programs now write, speak, and answer questions. They seem thoughtful, but we know they're not conscious. They respond without feeling. They mimic thought without thought. This shows how easy it is to mistake output for mind. If that can happen with machines, it could happen with people too, if they're not real. You might say, but people surprise me. They do things I don't expect. That's true. But in dreams, characters surprise you too. Your mind can create complexity. It can generate things you didn't plan. That doesn't prove they're real. It just shows your mind is deep enough to surprise itself. Memories are no help either. You remember a life, a past, and events with others. But memories are part of your mind. They can be altered or false. You can dream an entire day that never happened. You can believe you spoke with someone who isn't real. A false memory feels just as strong as a true one. If all your past is stored in your mind, how do you know it refers to anything beyond it? You might trust pain. Pain feels like proof that something is real. But pain is still just a signal. It's something you feel, not something that proves a world. You can feel pain in a dream or in a body that's not yours. Phantom limb pain affects people who have lost arms or legs. They feel pain in something that no longer exists. The signal is real, but the source is not. That's what solipsism claims about the whole world. Even your own body could be part of the illusion. You feel it move. You sense hunger and fatigue. But those are still sensations. You don't see the body from the outside. You only sense the result of having one. You could imagine it. Your mind could simulate the feel of a hand, a breath, or a heartbeat without those things being real. Just like it can simulate sound, light, and time. Other minds seem obvious. You assume they exist because people talk, cry, laugh, and share feelings. But you can't prove they feel anything. You don't see their thoughts. You only see behavior. That's not proof of experience. It's proof of appearance. In a dream, your friend might laugh. That doesn't mean a mind laughed. It means your mind created the image of one. You might believe solipsism is absurd. It sounds paranoid or extreme. But that's because you're used to treating shared reality as a given. You've never lived without it. But the belief in other minds is just that, a belief. It's not something you can prove. Some philosophers argue that solipsism can't be lived. You can't treat others as unreal and still function. You need to believe in a world. But that's a practical point, not a logical one. You might need the belief to avoid madness, but that doesn't make it true. Others say solipsism is unproductive. If no one else exists, why act with care? But even if the world is a dream, actions still matter inside it. You still feel pain, joy, and loss. Even if others are imagined, your reactions to them are real. You shape your own experience by how you behave. That might be enough reason to act with kindness, even in a dream. There's no clear way to refute solipsism. No experiment can disprove it. You can't step outside your mind to confirm that others have one. You can only choose to believe they do, or not. Most people choose belief, not because it's provable, but because it's useful. Still, the idea remains. You live in a space only you can see. Your thoughts echo only in your mind. Every face, voice, and place you've ever known could be part of the same story, one told to itself, by itself. Maybe you are the only listener. Maybe you are the only light in the dark. You think you're alive right now. You feel your breath. You see the light around you. You hear sounds, think thoughts, and move your body. You believe these things prove you're here right now, alive. But there's another way to see it. You may already be dead, not in some poetic or spiritual sense, but in a physical, final sense. Your death may have already happened. You just haven't reached it yet in your mind, because time may not be what you think it is. Time feels like a flow. One moment pushes into the next. You wake, you move, you age. You remember the past and imagine the future. This makes time feel like a river that carries you along. But physics doesn't describe time that way. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is part of space. Together, they form space-time, a structure where all points in time already exist. Your birth, your death, and everything in between all occupy fixed locations in that structure. They don't move. They don't change. You just experience them in sequence. Think of a film reel. Each frame is one moment. When played, the frames seem to move, but they don't change. They're all already printed. Your mind is like a projector, showing you each moment one at a time. But all the frames, your first steps, your last breath, are already there. From outside the film, your story is done. This idea is called the block universe. It says the past, present, and future all exist at once. You're not moving through time. You're moving through awareness. Each moment feels like the present, only because that's the one you're in. From a higher view, all of your moments are frozen. Time is not a line you travel. It's a landscape you experience in parts. This means you may already be dead, In the same way, you are already born. Your death exists somewhere in the structure of space-time. You're just not experiencing that frame yet. You think it's in the future, but that's just a matter of perspective. It's already written. It already exists. You just haven't reached it in your sequence. People often ask when death happens, but that question assumes time flows. In the block universe, there's no true when. Your death is not ahead of you. It's next in your mind's path, but not next in the universe. It's already fixed, like a dot on a map. No matter what you do, you can't move the dot. You can only wait until your path arrives at it. This also means your life isn't unfolding. It's unfolded. The story is whole. You're not writing it as you go. You're reading it one line at a time. Your choices feel free because you don't know what comes next. But the next part is already there. You just hadn't turned the page. This doesn't mean you should feel hopeless. It just shifts the frame. You don't control the story, but you still experience it. The feeling of choice is part of the experience. So is hope, fear, love, and loss. But these feelings don't change the structure. They fill it. They give weight to each moment. But the moments themselves are fixed. Each one gives the sense of motion. But motion requires a viewpoint. From outside the system, there is no motion, only states. This helps explain déjà vu. You feel you've lived a moment before. Maybe you have. Maybe your awareness slipped briefly, touched a nearby frame, then returned. Your mind can glitch. It can loop. It can misfire. These strange moments might be evidence that the frames exist in a fixed structure. Your consciousness may not always play them in the right order. Dreams could be another sign. You live entire lives in sleep. You feel them as real. You suffer or rejoice. Then wake up and realize none of it happened, at least not in this life. But if time is fixed and mind is separable from moment, maybe your awareness touches other places. Maybe your mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined, because both happen inside the same kind of structure. If your waking life is just a track in space-time, who's to say a dream is not another track? This view also dissolves the fear of death in a strange way. Your death is not an event to avoid. It's a part of the whole. You don't avoid birth. You don't delay childhood. They're just points in your line. So is death. You will experience it as you've experienced every other moment. It may feel fast or slow, scary or calm, but it's already there. Your body may die, but your moment of death will always exist somewhere in the structure. It doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the landscape. And if time doesn't erase anything, then every version of you still exists. The child you were still plays in a yard. The teen you were still wonders about the future. The adult still tries, fails, laughs, waits. Each frame is still there, holding still, like an image frozen in place. You don't remember them all at once, but they still make up the whole. The structure doesn't lose parts. It contains them. You may already be dead. That doesn't change the moment you're in. You're still here, reading these words. But this moment is not more real than your last breath. It's just the one your awareness occupies. You're not moving forward. You're standing still, watching the frames click by. The story doesn't need your input. It doesn't need your belief. It's already done. You're already complete. You're already gone. You live your life once. That's what most people believe. You're born, you grow, you act, and then you die. Your choices seem final. Your moments feel unique. But the idea of eternal return says something else. It says you may have lived this life before. Every step, every word, every mistake. Not just something similar, but the exact same life, down to the smallest detail, and not just once. You may be repeating this life endlessly, in a loop you can't break. This idea came from philosophy, not religion. The Greek Stoics spoke of it. Later, Friedrich Nietzsche pushed it further. He didn't say it was true in a scientific way. He asked what it would mean if it were. What if everything you do now, you will do again and again, forever? What if there is no escape, no final rest, no reset? The same thoughts, the same pain, the same joys, every time, without change. You might reject the idea as absurd, but physics offers a reason to take it seriously. The universe may be finite. There may be only so much matter, only so many ways particles can arrange themselves. The number is huge, but it's not infinite. If time continues forever, then those arrangements will repeat. Eventually, every pattern must come back, including the pattern that is your life. Imagine a deck of cards. Shuffle it for eternity. Sooner or later, you will get the same order again. If the universe is the deck and time keeps shuffling it, your life will come up once more. Not a copy, not a similar version, the same. In this view, you are not heading toward a new future. You are heading toward your past. Every moment you live has already happened, and it will happen again. You laugh at a joke. You blink. You scratch your arm. These acts feel small, but they are part of the pattern. If one returns, all do. Think about your worst moment, the sharp word you couldn't take back, the fear before bad news, the last breath of someone you loved. Those moments don't pass, they wait. And in time, they will return. You will face them again, without warning, without change. You will suffer them as if for the first time, but it won't be the first. You will have no memory of the last time, just the weight of it repeating. The same holds for joy, a child's first steps, a hand held in silence, music that struck you in the chest. These moments too will return. Not as a gift, but as part of the whole. You don't get to choose which ones come back. They all do. You may think repetition brings comfort, but eternal return removes hope. You cannot do better next time. There is no next. There is only this. The same choices, the same failures, the same reaching and falling short. Even your regret will return. You will regret the same thing for the same reason, as if you hadn't already done so infinite times before. This is not karma. You don't come back changed. You don't grow. You don't escape. There is no upward path. There is no punishment or reward. There is just the same. If you believe in free will, this view is harder still. You feel like you could act differently. But if this life is part of a closed loop, then every choice has already happened. You didn't choose it freely. You followed the script, and you will follow it again. The feeling of decision is part of the loop, but the outcome never shifts. Think of your daily routine. The small acts, washing a dish, checking a lock, walking the same path. They may seem unimportant, but they are fixed. They are part of the track. You run them like lines of code. If eternal return is true, then even your boredom returns. Your silence, your waiting. There is no outside to step into. No world where you choose a new script. You do not level up. You do not graduate. You repeat. Even if the universe ends, it may begin again. Some models in cosmology describe a cycle. A big bang, a spread, a collapse, another bang. Each time, the same conditions, the same stars, the same worlds, the same lives. You rise from dust, act your part, return to dust, and rise again. Some versions of this theory say the repetition is perfect. Nothing changes. Others allow for tiny shifts. But even with changes, the number of possible lives is limited. If you live long enough, you will meet yourself again. Not just someone like you, but you, with the same thoughts, in the same body, repeating the same lines. You might try to cheat the cycle. You might try to act so differently that you break the loop. But if the loop is perfect, then even your attempt to escape is part of it. Your resistance is expected. Your doubt has already happened. You are not rebelling. You are repeating rebellion. Why would the universe work this way? No one knows. It may be random. It may be necessary. It may be meaningless. But if it is true, then every life has already happened. Every future is already past. The loop is the shape of time, and you live at one point on the circle. This idea forces a question. If you knew you had to live this life again, would you live it the same way? Would you speak the same words? Would you treat people the same? Would you waste time, knowing you will waste it again? You can't choose another life, but you can ask whether this one is worth repeating. That question may not change the loop, but it changes how you face it. If you're doomed to repeat every moment forever, you carry a kind of weight. You carry your own return, and with it, the knowledge that nothing will ever be new again. You walk on concrete. You type on glass. You wear clothes, obey rules, and follow clocks. You live in a world of buildings, phones, and laws. But under all that, you are still an animal. You have teeth and blood. You get hungry, horny, angry, scared. Civilization gives you a structure, but it doesn't change what you are. It just hides it. You come from a long line of mammals. Before that, reptiles. Before that, fish. Evolution didn't stop when cities rose. Your body still holds the tools of survival: fight, flight, hunger, dominance, sex, and shelter. Civilization didn't erase these things. It just redirected them. You don't fight over food with claws, but you compete for jobs. You don't chase prey through the woods, but you race to meet deadlines and buy things you want. The drive is the same. The method changed. You dress your instincts in words. You say you want success, meaning, or respect. But those needs are old. They come from the need to survive, mate, and belong. You fear rejection not because it offends you, but because it once meant death. In small groups, to be cast out was fatal. So your brain evolved to avoid shame. You feel guilt to keep yourself in line. You call it a conscience, but it's a leash built from fear of losing the group. Your brain was shaped for life in tribes, around 150 people. That's the number of people you can know with any depth. Past that, you rely on labels: stranger, enemy, ally, rival. Cities are too big. Nations are abstract. So you sort people into groups: us and them, friend and foe. You bond through shared signs, flags, accents, slogans. You fear those who look or act different. You try to hide this, but it leaks out. You evolve to see difference as danger. You feel pride. You feel rage. These are tools, not luxuries. Pride raises your status. Others look to you. You gain power, protection, and mates. Rage defends your place. If someone threatens you, your body responds. Your heart races. Your vision narrows. You say sharp things. You fight if needed. You feel it as justice, but it's survival. Where mind justifies it after the fact. You crave sex because that's how genes spread. You pair bond, or sleep around, or fantasize alone. You pretend it's romance or freedom, but underneath it's simple. Your body wants to replicate itself. The forms vary, but the drive stays. Monogamy, polygamy, affairs, jealousy, they are ways the animal tries to control access to reproduction. They're not morals, they're tactics. You eat because your cells need energy, but you crave sugar and fat because they were rare once. Your body thinks famine is always near, so you hoard, you snack, you overeat. Civilization gives you easy food, but your body doesn't adjust. It still thinks you're in the wild, so you carry extra weight. You call it a health issue, but it's an ancient survival plan stuck in a new world. You get bored. That's your mind asking for input. In nature, boredom was rare. There was always something to do. Find food, watch for danger, care for others. In safe, structured life, boredom grows. You distract yourself with screens, gossip, and noise. You scroll because your brain wants novelty. It once scanned the forest. Now it scans feeds. You form hierarchies. In every group, school, office, prison, people sort themselves. Some rise, others submit. This happens fast and without plan. You can see it in body language. Who talks first? Who interrupts? Who gets listened to? You want fairness, but you follow dominance. Loud voices, tall bodies, strong posture. They get more space. It's not logic, it's biology. You want safety, so you build homes, wear coats, and lock doors. But you also want danger. You seek thrill. You climb mountains, race cars, jump from planes, start fights. Your mind craves the chemical spike of risk. Your body still prepares for threat, even when there is none. So you create it. You turn games into battles. You turn politics into war. You pretend it's about ideas, but it's about winning. You lie. You cheat. You hide. These are animal tools. They help avoid pain or gain advantage. Children do it without being taught. Adults just get better at it. You tell yourself lies, too. You build stories where you are always right. That's not evil. That's survival. The animal wants to avoid pain, even the pain of being wrong. You care for others. That's not weakness. That's a survival trait. Mothers protect babies. Friends watch each other's backs. Even animals grieve. Empathy exists because it helps the group. A group that helps its members lasts longer. So your brain gives you reward chemicals when you help. You feel love. But love is not magic. It's a tool for long-term bonding. The feeling is real. The reason is old. You use language. That seems like a human trick, but it's built from the same tool animals use. Signals. A dog growls. A bird sings. You make sounds that carry meaning. Over time, those sounds became words. But words are still just signals. They guide others. They warn, attract, promise, deceive. Your sentences carry more detail, but the goal is the same. Get what you want or avoid what you fear. You believe in fairness, but fairness is local. You help those near you. You care more when you see a face. Distant pain fades. You say all lives matter, but your body cares more about the ones you can touch. That's how tribes worked, where compassion is real, but it's shaped by distance. You believe in meaning. That's your brain tying events together. In nature, patterns meant survival. Tracks meant prey. Clouds meant rain. So your brain connects dots, even when they don't link. You see signs in randomness. You build stories to explain chance. You tell myths. You follow rituals. These things bring comfort, but they start from a brain trying to make the world less dangerous. You wear clothes. You use soap. You sit in chairs and say please. You think that makes you civilized, but the animal is still there. It watches. It waits. It slips out when you're tired, scared, or drunk. It acts before you think. It remembers slights. It wants to win. Civilization is a suit. The body inside it is older than language. Or still an animal. A smart one, a complex one, but not a separate one. The forest still lives in your blood. The tribe still lives in your mind. You've built a new world on top of an old brain, and the old brain still rules. You walk through a city and see your own kind everywhere. You use tools, speak complex languages, and build machines that fly. You run governments, map the stars, and edit DNA. From this view, it's easy to think you sit at the top. You believe humans are the smartest, most advanced life on Earth. But that belief may be more about comfort than fact. Other species might surpass us in ways we can't measure, or can't even see. We judge intelligence using our own tools. We measure memory, language, logic, and planning. We test for the kinds of things we value. If a species doesn't fit that model, we call it simple. But intelligence might not look like us. It might not use words or build towers. It might live in water. It might grow underground. It might be collective, not individual. Octopuses are a good place to start. Their brains are not like ours. They don't have one central hub. Instead, they have a distributed system. Parts of their nervous system sit in each arm. Their arms can act on their own, with no direct order from the brain. They solve puzzles, they use tools, they show memory. They escape tanks, open jars, and recognize individual people. Their lifespans are short, and they don't teach their young, but those limits come from biology, not from a lack of cognition. Crows and ravens show another kind of intelligence. They make tools in the wild. They plan steps ahead to solve tasks. They understand water displacement and can hold grudges. They pass knowledge down through generations. Some remember human faces for years. They don't speak, but they have complex calls and gestures. They think differently, but not less. Whales and dolphins live in worlds we don't understand. They speak through sound waves we can't hear without machines. They travel in tight social groups. They show empathy and self-awareness. Some even mourn their dead. We call them intelligent, but we still test them in tanks, using tricks designed for primates. Their real intelligence may lie in signals and culture we haven't decoded. Their languages might be rich, just not in ways we can parse. Ants and bees offer something stranger. No single insect seems smart, but as a colony, they perform complex tasks. They farm, fight wars, build structures, and adapt to threats. They have no leaders, yet they coordinate. This is called swarm intelligence. The group behaves like a mind. If you only look at the individual, you miss the point. The colony may be the true organism. That kind of mind may not feel like ours, but it works. Some fungi stretch over acres. The largest organism on Earth is a fungal network in Oregon. It spreads underground, linking trees and trading nutrients. It reacts to change. It shares resources. It remembers patterns in soil and adjusts its growth. It has no eyes, no limbs, no face, but it responds with purpose. It may not be conscious in the way we are, but it processes data. It survives. It adapts. Plants can signal danger. When one gets eaten, it releases chemicals into the air or soil. Nearby plants detect the warning and produce toxins. Some shift their shape or timing to avoid predators. These responses take time. We call them passive, but they are responses. They rely on sensing, memory, and action. If slowness makes something look dull, that's our bias, not the plant's failure. We assume evolution has a direction. We think the top means human-like, but evolution doesn't aim upward. It shapes traits that work in context. A shark is not less evolved than a human. It just found a form that works and kept it. Bacteria are older than us, simpler in structure, and far more successful. They adapt faster, outnumber us, and survive where we can't. If survival is the goal, they've already won. Even parasites can show complex behavior. Toxoplasma gondii changes the brain chemistry of its host. In rodents, it removes fear of cats. In humans, it may alter risk tolerance. The parasite does this with no mind of its own, but its genes carry a kind of strategy. It shifts other minds to reach its goal. That's a kind of manipulation we'd call cunning in another species. We also tend to link intelligence to control, because we alter the landscape. We think we dominate, but many species resist change better than us. Cockroaches, for example, have been around since before dinosaurs. They survive radiation, toxins, and starvation. They don't think about cities or meaning, but they don't have to. Their design works. They persist. Some argue that technology proves superiority. But what if technology is just one path? Elephants don't build, but they grieve, cooperate, and remember. Wolves coordinate hunts. Cephalopods change color to communicate. These are tools too, just not the kind that fill shelves or light screens. The assumption that we are at the top also depends on what we mean by intelligence. Is it tool use, communication, emotion, long-term planning, abstract thought? Each definition gives a different winner. No one species leads in all categories. We do some things well, others do different things better. We might also be missing forms of life entirely. Deep under the ocean, inside the earth, or hidden in ecosystems we barely understand, there may be networks or behaviors we haven't recognized as life at all. Intelligence may not need a nervous system. It might emerge from pattern, from rhythm, from feedback across time. We assume we're at the top because we tell the story. We write the books, run the tests, set the rules. But if another species had our tools, they might judge us differently. They might see us as loud, wasteful, unstable. They might see our wars, our pollution, our collapsing ecosystems, and wonder how we ever claimed to be the smartest. It's easy to measure intelligence by who builds the tallest tower. It's harder to measure it by who survives longest, who fits best in their world, or who leaves the smallest trace. If the Earth could vote, it might not choose us. It might not even notice us. Our view of intelligence is shaped by mirrors. What we call superior may just be familiar. You believe you know why you do things. You say you left the party because you were tired, not awkward. You picked the job because it fit your values, not because you feared risk. You gave the gift out of kindness, not guilt. These stories feel true, but they often aren't. They're guesses your brain makes after the fact. You act first, then explain. And the explanation sounds reasonable, so you believe it. But the real reason, what actually caused the choice, often stays hidden. Most of what drives you is unconscious. Your brain takes in signals, runs them through layers you never feel, and sends out actions. You get a feeling in your stomach, a sudden thought, a wave of irritation or calm. You act based on that. Then, a moment later, you put it into words. The story comes second. The reason you give is not always the reason you acted. This isn't a flaw. It's how the system works. Your mind evolved to make quick decisions. Survival often meant acting fast, avoiding danger, seizing chances, joining groups. The conscious part of your mind is slow. It's not built for speed. It's built for stories. So the fast system acts. The slow system watches, then tells a tale that makes sense. Imagine someone asks why you like a certain person. You say they're kind, or funny, or smart. But studies show people often make these judgments in seconds before the other person speaks. Their voice, face, or posture triggers a response. You feel good near them. That feeling becomes your reason. You list traits that match the feeling, but the traits may not matter. You liked them before you knew them. Or think about buying something. You tell yourself it's a smart choice. The quality is high, the price is fair. But your brain may have reacted to color, shape, or status cues. The thing reminded you of success, comfort, or safety. The feeling came first. Then the reasons followed. You acted from a place you don't see. You also rewrite your past. You think your memories show what happened. But memory is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. You remember fragments. Your brain fills in gaps. It smooths over pain and explains confusion. You forget moments that don't match your story. You highlight details that fit. Over time, your sense of self becomes a curated myth. You say you've grown, but much of what you do now is based on patterns set early. Your voice changes, your job title changes, but your core habits often stay the same. The way you react to stress, the people you choose to trust, the way you handle praise or silence. These patterns form in childhood and keep running. You don't think about them. You act them out. You also lie to yourself without meaning to. You tell yourself you're not angry when you are. You say you don't care when you do. You avoid thoughts that make you feel weak or ashamed. This is defense. It's the mind's way of keeping balance, but it means you hide things from yourself. And because you believe your own story, you don't question it. Even when you make choices, the freedom may be less than you think. Your preferences form from past events. Your likes and dislikes grow from reward and pain. You might think you choose your path, but the path may be laid long before you see it. You walk it and believe it was your idea. Split brain studies show this clearly. When researchers divided the brain's hemispheres, the left and right sides acted alone. One side could act without the other knowing why. But when asked, the conscious side still gave an answer. It didn't say, "I don't know." It made up a reason that fit. The brain prefers a full story, even if it has to invent part of it. This happens every day in small ways. You snap at someone, then say you were just tired. You miss a deadline, then say the task wasn't clear. You cancel plans, then say you had something urgent. These reasons feel true, but under them may be fear, guilt, envy, or boredom. You feel a push, you act, you explain. You live inside the explanation. This isn't about blame. You're not doing something wrong. The mind is a machine built to manage emotion, memory, and action in a noisy world. It has to act fast. It has to keep the story stable. So it edits, smooths, and fills gaps. You still think. You still feel. But you don't always know why. Therapy often works by helping you see what's below the surface. You talk through your actions until a deeper reason shows up. You thought you hated your job. You find out you feared failure. You thought you needed space. You find out you feared intimacy. These shifts feel like insight because they bring you closer to the real cause. But insight doesn't always last. The mind resists too much clarity if you stare too long at your own patterns. It can feel like falling through air. So the mind restores the mask. It lets you see just enough to cope, not so much that you freeze. People who know you may see parts of you better than you do. They watch your patterns. They hear what you don't say. But even they don't see the whole thing. The unconscious runs deep. It holds memory, fear, desire, and pain. It pulls strings while the surface smiles and explains. You think you act with reason, but often you act with feeling and wrap it in reason later. You build your life around stories. The stories feel stable, but they change. You forget past versions. You update them to fit the present. The truth slips in and out. You don't know yourself fully. You see a part. You walk through a fog with a mirror in your hand, and even that mirror lies. You chase reasons, find fragments, build stories, and keep walking. Not because you're lost, but because the mind works that way. It always has. You think you see yourself clearly. You believe you're smart enough to know your limits, fair enough to judge others, and aware enough to avoid self-dissection. But odds are, you're wrong. Not because you're foolish, but because your brain has a built-in tilt. It pushes you to believe you're better than you are. Not perfect, just above average. More moral, more skilled, more thoughtful. This is the overconfidence illusion. It's not a flaw in a few people. It's a trait in almost everyone. Ask a group of people if they're above average drivers. Most will say yes. Mathematically, that's impossible. Half have to be below average. But people don't see it that way. They focus on times they've driven well, not the mistakes they made. They compare themselves to the worst drivers they've seen. They ignore the better ones. The result is a false sense of skill. This effect shows up in other areas too. Students think they'll score higher than most of their classmates. Managers think they lead better than most of their peers. People rate themselves more honest, more compassionate, and more fair than others. Even prisoners tend to rate themselves as more law-abiding than the average citizen. That's not a joke. It's a real finding. The illusion runs deep. You might say, well, maybe I really am above average, and maybe you are in some areas. But statistically, that can't be true across the board. And when everyone believes it, someone's wrong. Overconfidence hides in everyday choices. You assume your plans will go smoothly, even if past ones didn't. You think you'll get more done than you do. You believe you're less biased than other people. But all of that depends on flawed memory, selective attention, and ego. Memory plays a role. You remember successes more than failures. When you recall a test, you remember the right answers. When you think about work, you remember what you finished, not what you delayed. You carry those memories into judgment. You believe you're reliable because you forget the times you weren't. You believe you're disciplined because you forget the skipped workouts or broken promises. You also judge yourself by intent, not result. If you meant to help someone but failed, you still count yourself as kind. But when others fall short, you judge them by outcome. They didn't help, so they must not care. This double standard keeps your self-image clean. You give yourself the benefit of the doubt. You rarely give others the same. This matters more in areas that touch morality. People like to think of themselves as good. They say they value honesty, fairness, and respect. But when they lie, cheat, or cut corners, they tell themselves a different story. They were under pressure. They had no choice. It didn't really hurt anyone. The act fades, the story stays. That story says, I'm still a good person, and the story wins. You probably know someone who's clearly overconfident. They talk more than they listen. They act sure when they shouldn't be. Their mistakes don't seem to slow them down. It's easy to see the flaw in others. It's much harder to spot it in yourself. You might think, I'm not like that. But that thought can be part of the same illusion. Confidence feels right from the inside, even when it's wrong. Even experts fall for it. Surgeons overestimate their success rates. Pilots misjudge their reaction times. Financial analysts think they can predict markets. In one study, doctors were more confident in their diagnoses than their accuracy justified. They didn't mean to deceive. They believed they were right. And they believed it strongly enough to ignore data that suggested doubt. Why does this illusion persist? Because it helps. Confidence boosts performance in some settings. It reduces anxiety. It helps people start hard tasks. It improves social standing. If you doubt yourself all the time, you hesitate. You lose status. So evolution may have favored those who believed in their own skills, up to a point. The cost of overconfidence was smaller than the cost of constant fear. But there's a price. Overconfident people take bigger risks. They ignore warning signs. They trust gut feeling over evidence. In high-stakes fields, that gets dangerous. Leaders overestimate how easy wars will be. Investors assume markets will rebound. Engineers believe systems are safer than they are. When those guesses fail, people suffer. In personal life, overconfidence can strain relationships. You think you're the reasonable one. You assume your memory of the argument is right. You don't consider the other person's view. That makes resolution harder. You don't try to fix what you don't think is broken. And when both people think they're right, no one backs down. You also miss chances to grow. If you already believe you're better than others, why change? Why ask for help? Why practice more? People who think they're great at something rarely do the work to get better. They plateau early. Confidence feels like progress, but sometimes it blocks it. You may not notice your own blind spots because they hide behind your self-image. You believe you're thoughtful, so you don't see how often you interrupt. You think you're open-minded, so you don't notice how fast you judge. You think you listen, but you spend most of the time preparing your next point. These mismatches go unchallenged unless someone tells you. Even then, you may resist it. No one wants to see themselves clearly when the view gets uncomfortable. One way to test your own judgment is to track your predictions. Write them down. How long will this task take? How well will I do? How will they respond? Don't revise after the fact. Compare the guess to the outcome. Over time, you may see a pattern. You may be close or you may be way off. Either way, the data speaks louder than belief. You can also look at how you explain events. When you succeed, do you credit effort or talent? When you fail, do you blame others or yourself? Do you give others the same room for error you give yourself? When someone tells you you're wrong, do you defend or pause? Those answers won't fix the illusion, but they shine a light on it. Overconfidence doesn't mean arrogance. It can look quiet. It can live under humility. It shows up in small ways, in plans, estimates, judgments, excuses. It rides along with you, whispering, "You're probably right. You're better than most." And it whispers that because it feels good to hear. The hard part is listening for it and knowing it's lying. You feel like you are a single person. You think you have a self, a center. You call it I. It feels like the part of you that chooses, remembers, decides, and experiences. It feels like you're in control. But that sense of self may not be what it seems. Some scientists and philosophers argue that consciousness is not a solid thing. It's not a force or a soul. It's not even a unified process. It may be a trick your brain plays on itself, a useful story, a side effect of systems working together, an illusion. Your brain does not have a single control room. There's no place where everything comes together and gets seen by a central observer. Instead, the brain is a collection of modules. These systems handle movement, vision, language, emotion, memory, and more. They pass signals, respond to inputs, and make guesses. Each part works on its own. Some systems never talk to each other. But you don't feel scattered. You feel whole. That's the illusion. When you make a decision, it feels like your inner self chooses. You say, "I did this." But choices form before that. Your brain starts preparing for action before you become aware of it. In lab tests, people press a button when they feel the urge, but brain scans show the brain begins preparing that movement several hundred milliseconds earlier. The signal to act comes first. The feeling of choice comes second. Your brain acts, then your mind explains. You feel like you think your thoughts, but thoughts arise without effort. You don't know what thought will come next. You don't decide what to notice, or when a memory shows up. You just observe them. If you stop and listen, you'll notice thoughts appear on their own. You can respond, you can reflect, but you don't create them from scratch. The voice in your head isn't someone talking. It's a pattern running. The sense of I depends on memory. You feel like the same person today that you were yesterday. You tell a story of who you are, but your body changes, your brain changes, your thoughts shift. Your memories are not exact. They change each time you recall them. You update them without knowing. The story you tell about your life is built from fragments, guesses, and edits. There is no fixed core. There is only the sense of a core. Split brain studies offer strong evidence. In people with their brain hemispheres separated, each side acts on its own. If one side sees a word and the other doesn't, only that side responds. The left brain might say one thing, while the right body acts another way. But both halves still claim to be the whole person. They each build a story to explain behavior, even when the story is false. This shows that the brain builds the idea of a unified self, even when no single self exists. When you talk to yourself, who is talking and who is listening? When you think about what you should do, who's the one doing the thinking? It feels like a loop, not a structure, a reflection inside a reflection. That's because the brain evolved to model the world, and then it started modeling itself. It builds a picture of a person having thoughts. That picture becomes what you call you. But that model is always behind. It updates after events. It guesses what happened. You feel like you're watching your life unfold in real time, but your awareness lags. The brain edits your experience, to create a smooth timeline. You don't see raw inputs. You see a version shaped by your needs, your attention, and your expectations. Your brain also filters data. Most of what your senses pick up never reaches awareness. You don't notice your breathing unless you focus on it. You don't feel your clothes most of the time. You don't see the blow at the edge of your vision. The brain ignores noise and shows you a clean, usable picture. That picture feels like reality, but it's a simplification, a model built for action, not for truth. Pain is not just a signal from the body. It's shaped by attention, emotion, and context. The same injury can feel worse or better depending on what you expect. The same sound can seem louder or softer depending on your state. Even vision fills in gaps. Your blind spot has no input. The brain patches it with a guess. You don't see the guess. You see a full image. This shows that what you experience isn't raw data. It's a polished version made for speed and function. The self feels stable, but it breaks under stress. People with brain injuries lose parts of who they were. Some lose memory. Others lose impulse control. Some lose awareness of their own limbs. Some people develop multiple identities. These shifts show that the self depends on a working system. Damage the system, and the self changes. That wouldn't happen if there were a soul or fixed core inside. It happens because the self is a product. You may feel alarmed by this idea. If the self is not real, what are you? But illusion doesn't mean non-existence. A rainbow is an illusion. It's light bending in air. It looks like an object. You can't touch it. But it's still there. The self is like that. A pattern built from processes. A story built from experience. A tool for living in a world that requires planning, memory, and social bonds. Your brain builds this story because it helps. A unified self can take blame, earn praise, make deals, feel guilt. It lets groups function. It gives the body a goal. But that goal is a fiction, a mask worn by shifting systems. When you say I, you're pointing at a pattern. That pattern keeps changing. It rewrites itself each day. It floats above the machinery that built it. It feels like it leads, but it follows. The self is not a thing. It's a way your brain holds together a stream of thought. That stream moves fast. You feel like a person riding in the river. But there's no rider. There's only the river. You wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, check your phone, talk to someone, worry about a deadline. You do this every day. You make plans. You try to be kind or smart or useful. You hold on to memories. You hope your life adds up to something. You believe what you do matters. But it might not. Not in any final way. Not in a way that lasts beyond you. On the scale of the universe, your life, like all lives, may be meaningless. The Earth is one planet around one star. That star is one of about 100 billion in the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way is one of at least 2 trillion galaxies in the visible universe. That number may go up. Between the stars is cold, empty space. Most of the universe is dark. Most of it doesn't even contain atoms, just dark matter and energy we don't understand. In this vast, expanding field, you are a small arrangement of cells that will last a brief time and then end. You live for maybe 80 years, if you're lucky. Your ancestors were fish, then mammals, then primates. Their lives came and went. So will yours. Your body will break down. Your name will be forgotten. The people who remember you will also die. Your country will change or fall. The languages you speak may vanish. Every book you read will crumble. Every building you walk past will rot or be torn down. Given enough time, even the sun will die. It will expand, swallow the inner planets, and then collapse. Earth will burn. Every trace of human history will go with it, and the universe won't notice. No one will mourn. No higher force will tally the lives lost. The stars will continue to form, burn, and die. Galaxies will drift further apart. Eventually, if the math is right, the universe will stretch until it becomes cold and silent. Matter will break down. Time may stop. What happens then is unknown, but it won't involve you or anyone like you. Even now, while you live, the universe doesn't care. You might save a life or take one. You might spend a decade learning a craft or give up early. You might love someone or lose them. None of that registers outside Earth. If you flew 1,000,000 light years in any direction, no one would know humans exist. Our signals haven't reached that far, and even if they did, they would be noise by the time they arrived, static fading in the background. What you do matters to you, to others near you, but matter, in that sense, just means it feels important. That feeling doesn't carry outside the mind. It doesn't last. Every argument you've had, every plan you've made, every hope, every fear, none of it alters the shape of the universe. You can't change the path of stars. You can't stop time. Your reach ends quickly. People have built systems to give life meaning. Religion, philosophy, politics, art, all of them create stories that say life is worth something. These systems can offer comfort, but they don't change the scale. A story doesn't stop entropy. A belief doesn't change physics. You can act with purpose, but that purpose only matters within the story. Once the story ends, the meaning ends with it. This is not a judgment of your choices. It's a description of your position. The same holds for everyone. Great leaders, thinkers, and artists all will vanish. Their works may last longer than yours, but not forever. Given enough time, even the greatest acts become dust. The pyramids will fall. The last book will decay. The last memory will fade. Nothing stands. You might think your mind is special, that thoughts and feelings are more than matter. But consciousness arises from a physical system. Your brain processes inputs, predicts outcomes, adjusts actions. When the system fails, the experience ends. Thought stops. Awareness stops. That silence doesn't mean failure. It's just what happens when the parts no longer work. You might try to leave a legacy, but a legacy is just memory in other people's minds. It fades. It can be twisted or lost. You might leave a name on a building or a line in a book, but even those vanish. 1,000,000 years from now, nothing built by humans will stand. 1 billion years from now, Earth may not exist. 1 trillion years from now, no light may remain. Even if humans escape Earth, the same rule applies. They may build cities on other planets, send signals across stars, create vast digital archives, but those things also decay. Nothing lasts forever. Time always wins. This view can feel bleak. People want their lives to mean something. They want justice, legacy, reward. They want to believe their suffering has a purpose. But the universe is not built to give comfort. It doesn't care. It didn't start with us. It won't end with us. It isn't about us. We're not the main story. We're not even a footnote. You might think love proves otherwise, that human connection gives meaning. And yes, love feels real. It shapes behavior. It brings joy and grief. But it doesn't last beyond life. When two people die, their bond ends. When the last person who remembers them dies, their story ends. No trace remains. That doesn't make love false. It makes it temporary. The same is true of fear. Fear feels huge. But fear of death, failure, loss, it all belongs to the same system that will end. The thing that feels afraid will stop feeling. The cause of fear will stop existing. You worry about things that don't outlast you. From a cosmic view, all goals vanish. Money, status, legacy, none of them cross time. You might chase a title. You might win or lose. Either way, the race means nothing once you're gone. You won't remember it. No one else will either, given enough time. You might say meaning comes from the present. That living matters because it feels like it does. That joy, pain, effort, and care shape experience. That's true, in a limited way. But the feeling of meaning doesn't make something matter outside that feeling. Experience is real. Its significance is not. In the end, the universe keeps moving. Stars collapse. matter fades, time stretches, and nothing you do will change that. You can build, destroy, love, fight, learn, or forget. But on the scale that holds galaxies, your actions pass unnoticed, your thoughts pass unrecorded, your name passes unspoken. You may live well, you may live poorly, but you do not live permanently. Nothing does. You open your eyes each morning and step into a world that feels solid. You see people, objects, streets, and skies. You trust your senses. You believe what you see and touch is real, but that trust may be misplaced. You may live inside a simulation. This world, your body, your memories, your choices, could be part of a system built by someone else. You may not be real in the way you think you are. The idea sounds strange, but it comes from a simple logic. If it's possible to simulate a world with conscious beings in it, and if someone has the power to do it, then simulations could be common. If they're common, then the odds that you're in the original base reality go down. You may be one of many copies. The real world might sit behind layers you can't see or reach. Think of video games. They've changed quickly in a short time. Early games used blocks of color to represent people. Now they render faces, cities, and weather in real time. They respond to actions, simulate physics, and learn from players. If that trend continues, future systems might create full worlds. The characters in those worlds could be complex enough to think. They could believe they are real, and they could be wrong. Right now, humans simulate parts of reality in labs and on computers. Climate models predict how the atmosphere changes. Economic models test policies before they're used. Medical simulations prepare doctors for surgery. These systems don't have consciousness, but they aim for realism. As computing power grows, so does the detail. There may come a point when the line between simulation and reality blurs. Now imagine a civilization more advanced than ours. Maybe it's millions of years ahead. Maybe it's not human at all. If it wanted to study its own past, it might run simulations of earlier eras. It could simulate whole populations with full histories. Each simulated person would feel alive. Each would think, act, and remember. But none of them would exist outside the code. This leads to a strange thought. If one advanced group can make one such simulation, it could make thousands. Each one could run different choices, test different histories. In that case, for every one real universe, there could be millions of simulated ones. The odds you are in the real one shrink fast. You might say, "But I feel real." And you do. But feeling real doesn't prove you are. You feel pain in dreams. You cry in movies. Your brain treats images and stories as real. A simulation would use that same brain. It would give you input, sight, sound, memory. You'd believe it because that's what brains do. The simulation wouldn't need to fool you. It would just need to give you experience. You could be a program in a complex system designed to follow certain rules, make certain choices, and respond to certain inputs. You could be one of many copies running side by side. Some might have different settings. Some might loop. Some might pause and restart. You wouldn't know. You'd feel like you were making your own choices, but the code would guide you. The rules would set your limits. There are signs in physics that some take as hints. The universe has strict rules. The speed of light is fixed. Quantum events are random, but follow patterns. Energy is conserved. These features make reality easier to simulate. The rules are simple. They don't allow for chaos. That makes them useful for compression, the same way a game engine uses rules to manage data. The fact that the world behaves so predictably could be a clue that it's running on a system. There's also a problem with scale. The universe is huge, but finite. You can only see so far. There's a limit to what you can measure. At the smallest level, space itself may be made of bits, tiny units, like pixels. Some theories suggest the universe has a base resolution. That sounds like a simulation, where you don't render more detail than you need. You might also consider how little access you have to the foundations of reality. You can't see atoms directly. You can't touch the past. You don't know what dark matter is. You only know what your senses tell you and what tools confirm. But those tools also rely on senses. If all of it is part of a system, you're only seeing what the system lets you see. You may think a simulation needs too much power, but if you only simulate what's needed, it becomes efficient. You don't need to simulate the whole world at once. You only simulate what the subject sees. Like a video game, the world around you might render as needed. If no one looks at it, it stays blank. When you turn a corner, the system fills in the view. You think it was always there, but it wasn't. There are also social and ethical reasons a civilization might simulate us. Maybe it wants to study human behavior. Maybe it wants to test moral ideas. Maybe it's curious about how minds evolve. The goals could be complex or simple. You might be in a school project, a lab test, or an art piece. You wouldn't know. You might ask, does it matter? If you're conscious, does it change things to learn you're simulated? You still feel love. You still suffer. You still choose. But the meaning of those things might shift. You are not part of nature. You are part of a design. Your world is not self-created. It's shaped by code. You could be deleted. You could be watched. You could be paused. You could be copied. You may not have free will, only the appearance of it. You may not have a soul, only a self. You may not have a future, only the current frame. Everything you think is yours could be part of a file. This is not a belief. It's a possibility. One that grows stronger as machines improve and humans build better models. You might still be in the real world, but you can't prove it, and the odds are not in your favor. You believe you know who you are. You carry a name, a history, a set of memories that make you feel like a single, stable person. You say, I was born here. I did this. I want that. You tell stories about your childhood, your dreams, your setbacks. You feel like these stories explain you, but they might not. The self you think you are may not exist, not in the way you believe. It may be a story, told by your brain, shaped by your culture, edited over time. A fiction with a voice so convincing you never question it. Your brain takes in millions of bits of information every second. Most of them never reach awareness. What does reach you is filtered, cleaned up, and organized into something you can understand. This cleaned up version includes not just what you see and hear, but also what you think about yourself. You experience a life, but you also explain it as you go. That explanation becomes your identity. You don't have access to most of what your brain does. You don't feel your neurons firing. You don't track the source of your choices. You just feel a thought, then say, that's mine. You act, then say, I meant to do that. But meaning comes after action. Intention often follows behavior. The brain does things first, then tells a story about why. That story feels like truth, but it's often a guess. Think of a moment when you surprised yourself. Maybe you yelled at someone. Maybe you helped someone when you didn't plan to. Maybe you picked a job or a partner you never expected. You tell yourself later why it made sense. You say it was impulse or logic or fate. But in the moment, you didn't know. You only knew after. That's because the self isn't driving, it's narrating. Memory plays a big part. You think your memories form the foundation of your identity, but memory is not stable. It's a process, not a file. Each time you recall something, you change it. You add new emotions, leave out details, shift context. The brain rewrites past events to fit the present, and it does this without telling you. So your story keeps changing, and you keep believing it's true. You forget more than you remember. You remember what supports your current view. You drop what doesn't. If you believe you're strong, you highlight moments when you endured. You forget the times you gave up. If you believe you're unlucky, you recall failure and overlook success. The self is a selective record. Culture shapes the story too. In Western societies, the self is told as an individual journey. In other places, it's told as part of a group. You pick up these patterns from birth. You watch how others talk about identity. You learn what traits matter: ambition, kindness, loyalty, power. Then you build a version of yourself that fits the model. You become a character in a script you didn't write. You learn to say, "This is who I am." You list your job, your values, your habits. You forget that these things change. You didn't always value what you do now. You may not value it next year, but the story edits that. It smooths out change. It creates a sense of continuity, even when the facts don't support it. This doesn't mean you're lying. The story is not a trick, it's a tool. The brain builds it so you can act in a complex world. If you didn't have a sense of self, you'd struggle to plan, to choose, to hold relationships. The story helps. It gives you goals and limits. It gives others a way to connect with you. It makes social life possible. But the story can trap you. You might believe things about yourself that no longer serve you. You might say, "I'm bad with people," or "I always mess things up," because the story says so. You might pass up chances because they don't fit your character. You play your role even when the script hurts you. Other people help write your story. They tell you who you are. Parents, teachers, friends, they all give feedback. They say you're smart or lazy, kind or selfish. You absorb their words and fold them into your identity. Sometimes they see something true. Sometimes they don't. But the story takes shape either way. Social media makes this even stronger. You present a version of yourself online. You pick photos, words, and events that support your narrative. You get feedback, likes, shares, silence. This shapes what you post next. Over time, your digital self becomes part of your real identity. You start to believe in the image you created. Now imagine that everything you think of as you is part of that image. Your preferences, your fears, your talents. None of them may be fixed. All of them may shift under pressure or over time. The story says they are stable, but the story is biased. It wants to feel complete. Some researchers think the self is a kind of user interface. Like icons on a screen, it hides complexity. You don't see the code. You just see a face, a name, a path. That helps you function, but it's not the full system. The real mind is messy. It runs routines you don't see. It responds to signals you don't feel. The story helps you keep going, but it's not the driver. It's the voice in the rearview mirror. You may never meet the real you because there may not be one. Just a stream of experience, edited and packaged into something that looks like a person. You are not the editor. You are the product, and the story goes on, whether you believe it or not. You live in a body shaped by chance. Your brain evolved over time, shaped by pressure, not by design. It wasn't made to find truth. It was made to help you survive. It was built to notice patterns, avoid danger, find food, and reproduce. That's it. You can walk, speak, remember, and plan. But that doesn't mean you can understand everything. In fact, you probably can't. There may be limits built into you, limits you can't see, but that shape how far your mind can go. Your eyes don't see the whole spectrum. You can't see ultraviolet or infrared. You can't hear most frequencies. You can't smell what a dog smells. You can't sense magnetism like birds or sharks. Your senses only give you a narrow slice of what's out there. You live inside that slice and mistake it for the full picture. But the world doesn't change just because you can't detect it. Your mind works the same way. You think in terms of space, time, and objects. You look for causes and effects. You look for beginnings and endings. That framework works well in daily life. It helps you solve problems and make decisions, but it may not match reality at its deepest level. Physics offers clues. Quantum mechanics shows that particles don't behave like solid things. They act like waves. They change when you measure them. They exist in many states at once and collapse into one when observed. None of this fits common sense. It doesn't feel real, but the math works. The experiments repeat. You get the same result, even if you don't understand what it means. Relativity tells you time is not fixed. It moves faster or slower, depending on speed and gravity. If you move near the speed of light, a minute for you might be an hour for someone else. Time stretches, space bends, but you can't feel that. You feel time as steady. You feel space as flat. Your mind gives you a simple map. But the real terrain is curved and strange. Try to picture 4 spatial dimensions. Try to picture a particle being in 2 places at once. Try to imagine nothingness, not empty space, but no space at all. You can't. You can say the words, you can do the math, but you can't hold it in your head. Your brain didn't evolve for that. It evolved for forests, tools, faces, and groups. It didn't evolve to grasp quantum fields or infinite time. Even in math, which feels pure, there are limits. Gödel's incompleteness theorem shows that no system can prove all truths about itself. There are true things that can't be proven. That's not a glitch. That's part of how logic works. So even with perfect reasoning, you hit a wall. The same goes for your own mind. You feel like you know your thoughts, but you don't choose what thoughts come next. They appear. You respond. You can reflect, but not fully. Parts of your mind stay hidden from you. Memory can be wrong. Perception can be fooled. You can't always trust your senses. You can't always trust your conclusions. Think about dreams. In dreams, everything feels real. You walk through rooms, speak to people, feel emotions. Then you wake up, and it all disappears. But during the dream, you never question it. The mind accepts it. If your brain can be fooled during sleep, what makes you sure it isn't fooled now? What if your waking life is another kind of dream, just more stable? Your tools don't save you. Telescopes, microscopes, colliders. They give you data, but only through filters. Instruments extend your reach, but they don't escape bias. Every tool is built by minds like yours. Every result is read by eyes like yours. If your brain has blind spots, your tools inherit them. Even your language might be a limit. You use words to think, but words come from human needs. They describe shapes, actions, emotions, but not the full range of what exists. Some ideas can't be spoken. Some truths may not fit into sentences. You try to translate the universe into nouns and verbs, but it might not speak that way. You want answers. You want to know where everything came from, why it exists, and what it all means. But those questions assume there are answers that make sense to you. What if there aren't? What if the truth, at the deepest level, isn't something a human brain can hold? Picture an ant trying to understand a smartphone. It crawls across the surface. It senses heat. It sees light. But it doesn't know what the device is for. It doesn't grasp code, networks, or purpose. Not because it's wrong, but because it lacks the tools. You may be in the same place. You crawl across the surface of reality. You sense a few things. You build models, but the source remains out of reach. This isn't about being stupid. You may be using your brain as well as anyone can, but the brain itself might be too small for the job. Not in size, but in structure. You can build a rocket, but you can't imagine what lies beyond the edge of time. You can measure a black hole, but you can't picture the singularity. You can ask, why is there something rather than nothing? But you may never get an answer that means anything to you. Some truths might not even exist in human terms. They might not be true or false. They might not follow logic. They might lie outside cause and effect. You want reality to behave like a story, with parts that make sense and fit together. But stories are human tools. They make life feel ordered. That doesn't mean the universe follows the same rules. You think knowing will make you safe, but knowing may be impossible. You may be like a fish in a bowl, staring through glass. You see ripples, you see motion, but you don't see the room, or the house, or the street. You can't. Your eyes weren't built for that. Still, you try. You ask questions. You build models. You test ideas. That effort matters, even if the final answers stay out of reach. You weren't meant to know everything. You were meant to survive. Understanding may be a bonus, limited, fragile, and always incomplete. You look at the night sky and see stars. Thousands if you're lucky. Millions if you use a telescope. Each one is a sun. Many have planets. Some of those planets may have water, air, and the right temperature. It seems obvious that life should be out there, life like ours, or more advanced. But the silence remains. No signals, no visits, no signs. You listen, and you hear nothing. You look, and you see no one. This silence has a name. It's called the Fermi paradox. The paradox is simple. There are billions of stars in our galaxy. Many of them are older than our sun. Some of them should have planets where life could start. Given time, some of that life should become intelligent. Intelligent life should build tools. Some should build spacecraft. Some should spread through the galaxy. And yet we see no trace. No ships, no beacons, no ruins. Just space. There are many guesses. Maybe aliens use signals we can't detect. Maybe they hide. Maybe they watch but never speak. Maybe they wipe themselves out. Maybe they're too far away. But maybe the answer is simpler. Maybe we are alone. Life began on Earth over 3 billion years ago. For most of that time, it stayed simple. Bacteria, algae, cells with no brains. For billions of years, there was no tool use, no language, no fire. Complex animals only appeared about 600 million years ago. Humans, our kind, have existed for less than 1% of Earth's history. For most of time, there was nothing like us. If Earth took that long to produce intelligent life, it's possible that such life is rare. Most planets may never get beyond microbes. Some may not even reach that stage. Life may require very specific conditions: water, a stable climate, a magnetic field, a large moon, the right chemicals. Miss one, and nothing happens. Even if life starts, evolution is not a straight line. It doesn't aim for intelligence. It only selects traits that help survival in a specific place at a specific time. On Earth, intelligence was just one solution among many. Dinosaurs ruled for millions of years without it. Insects thrive without it. Bacteria outnumber us and outlast us. Conscious thought is not a guaranteed outcome. It's an accident that happened to work, for now. You might think technology is the next step, but intelligence does not always lead to space travel. Dolphins are smart. So are elephants, crows, and octopuses. But none of them build rockets. They don't write code. They don't shape the planet. They remain clever within their limits. Human intelligence is special, not because it exists, but because it builds on itself. Language, memory, teaching, these let knowledge grow. Without them, even a smart species stays stuck. Even when a species does build tools, the path to survival stays hard. Humans have nearly wiped themselves out many times. Floods, droughts, disease, war. Civilization is fragile. A single asteroid could end it. So could a nuclear war. So could climate collapse. So could a virus. Our tools can save us or destroy us. Other species, if they exist, might not get lucky. They might never pass the tests we've barely passed. Then there's time. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Earth formed 4.5 billion years ago. Our radios have been around for only 100 years. Our rockets for less. That's a tiny window. If aliens sent a signal 1,000,000 years ago, we missed it. If they arrive 1,000,000 years from now, we'll be gone. Civilizations may rise and fall like sparks in the dark, never overlapping. Even if two exist at the same time, the distance may be too great. The nearest star system is over 4 light years away. That's 25 trillion miles. A signal sent today would take years to arrive. A ship would take centuries, even at high speed. The galaxy is vast. Most of it is empty. Civilizations may live and die without ever meeting. You might ask why no one builds large visible structures, megastructures, Dyson spheres, planet-scale artifacts. We've looked. We've scanned the sky for signs of such things. We haven't found any. That could mean they don't exist, or it could mean that intelligent life never survives long enough to build them. There's also the chance that intelligence itself is a dead end. Once a species becomes powerful, it becomes unstable. It builds tools that outpace its wisdom. It creates systems it can't control. It changes its environment too fast. It burns resources, poisons ecosystems, and starts wars. This may be the default path. Intelligence may be self-limiting. Consciousness may lead to collapse. In that case, we're not just alone. We're rare. We are a brief anomaly, a flare in the dark, and we may not last. The Earth will survive. Life will adapt. But humans, this specific form of intelligence, may vanish. And if we vanish, the only voice in the universe might go silent. If that's true, then everything you see and do, every song, every book, every act of care or cruelty, exists only here. There is no second Earth, no backup, no other mind watching from the stars. The universe will go on, but it will not know us. There will be no one to remember us. You might hope that somewhere, in some galaxy, someone is watching. Someone is listening. Someone will respond. But there may be no response. Just the noise of space. Just the quiet drift of stars. Just light moving through vacuum, carrying no message, meaning nothing. You may be the only thinking being for billions of miles. Your thoughts may be the only ones. Your species may be the only one. If you go extinct, the light may go out forever. Not just for humans, but for the universe. It may become quiet in a final way.